Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's summer is going well. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Safa, and I'm the head of editorial and acting secretary at the USDSA. I will be proudly your. Wait one second. Yes, I think my camera was not on. So, I will proudly be your host for today's What Next. So, before anything, we're going to have a word from one of the most truly inspirational members in our board, and that is our president, Ghada. So, if you can please unmute your mic.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. So, hello everyone, I'm Ghada, President of USDSA and a BDS4 student. I'm so happy to see all of you here today. I know to most of us, what's next is a nerve-wracking question, because to us, life after graduation is blurry, and we're not sure what path we want to take or what paths are available. So we organized this webinar with our head of scientific, Daniel Khatib, thank you Dania and Sarah Safa, in order to enlighten our students and to give a space for these amazing speakers to show us the different paths available and to provide a clearer view of our future endeavors. We have inspiring speakers from different countries around the world here with us today. Some are US alumni and some were previous USDSA members and board members as well. And we're truly proud to see where they have reached today. So without further ado, it'd be my pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar titled What's Next, second edition. So students, make use of this opportunity. Take notes, ask questions, and truly learn from these valuable experiences. With that said, I'll pass this on to our MC for today, our General Secretary and Editor, Sarah Safa.
Thank you so much, Ghada. So before we begin, I would like to briefly explain what this event is like. So What's Next is an online webinar event that centers around helping students with guiding their careers after graduating from their BDS programs. We have chosen this year 7 different countries to discuss today with our stellar panel of speakers. So the speakers will first share their presentations, then the session will follow a Q&A format. If some of you can't unmute their mics, then you can simply type your questions in the chat box, and I will read them to our speaker. Each speaker and country, of course, has a specific time slot. To check the program schedule, you can always go to our Instagram page at USDSA, or you can click the link that we'll send in the chat box in a bit. All right? So one last thing before we begin. Many students have requested specific countries after the What's Next program had already been announced. So if you have any countries to suggest, please feel free to send them to our Instagram page. We will be making a list and forwarding it to the next board that comes after us. All right? So without further ado, I would like to proudly present our first speaker for today, Dr. Sarra Abdul Latif, representing Canada.
All right. So good morning, everybody. Everything is good. You can hear me. You can see the presentation. All good?
Yes, doctor.
Perfect. All right. So good morning, everybody. This is Sarra Dhafar Abdel Latif. I'm talking to you from Seattle, Washington, from the other side of the world. It's really late in here. It's 11:30 p.m. So bear with me. I had a very long day, but I have my tea, so I'll do my best. All right. I'll start with an introduction about myself. I graduated from BDS University of Sharjah in 2013. I immigrated to Canada same year. I did not do my internship. I started the equivalency process right away. I went through a set of exams, as we will discuss later in details. And I got my license in 2015. And then I decided to go back to school and do specialty in prosthodontics at UBC, University of British Columbia in Vancouver, BC. That was a 3-year program. I graduated in 2018 and I moved to the US. Life happened. I moved to the US and I started working in Seattle area since 2019. So that's just a brief introduction so you know what I went through and you know what steps I did. So all I'm going to share today is from my personal experience. I've done it a while ago, so things might have changed. I would always recommend checking their websites and checking from all the information. I try to update my information, but still things change regularly, basically. So yeah, I'll be discussing the major points about getting your license as a general dentist in Canada and also getting a specialty from Canada. If you have any questions, you can stop me at any point. It's usually more beneficial to have kind of a discussion back and forth rather than just me talking here. So if you have any questions, just you can put it in the chat or you can stop me and we can discuss that. All right, that's a beautiful picture of the city that I lived in when I did my residency. It's in Vancouver, BC. It's a beautiful city. Whoever is going to Canada needs to visit Vancouver. All right, the objectives for today is discussing, as I mentioned, discussing general dentist license in Canada. We have two paths to do that, either the direct licensing through set of exams or going through a DDS program for international dentists. We'll also go through specialty programs in Canada, how to obtain a specialty degree in Canada and being a licensed specialist. I'm going to go over work opportunities in Canada briefly and the possible work opportunities in UAE. I personally don't have experience in working in UAE, but I've done some research and I asked some colleagues, so I'll share whatever information I have. And then we'll end the session with some questions and answers. Okay, we'll start with the general dentist license. It's regulated by the NDEB, or the National Dental Examination Board of Canada. It's the organization which is responsible for granting dentists their license to practice dentistry through some standardized exams. Where would we start from? We would start from this website, ndeb.ca. All the information about your possible options to be a general dentist or a specialist, you'll find it on this website. It's very important. I still remember checking this website when I was in BDS 2 or 3. So it has all the information, all the contact information for the dental schools that you need to talk to, their mailing address, their phone numbers. Yeah, and they update it regularly, as I mentioned earlier. So make sure to have this website saved somewhere. Okay, so here's a chart that's describing the process to get your license in Canada briefly. It usually consists of two major steps, the equivalency process and the certification process. The equivalency process starts with an MCQ exam. It's called Assessment of Fundamental Knowledge. And then you have two options to continue the process. You either go through a set of other exams, the Assessment of Clinical Judgment and the clinical exam, NDECC. Or there's an option of going through school where you apply for a program. It's usually a 2 or 2.5 year program, and then you graduate from their school as a DDS graduate and then go through the certification process. Certification process consists of 2 exams, and then after you're done, you get your certification, you do some paperwork and get your license. We'll go through them in more details in a bit. All right, so usually start the process by signing up to have an online profile, gather all the required documents, your transcripts, your diplomas, your degrees. I remember having them attested by the Ministry of Education, and yeah, as I call Wizarة التربية والتعليم basically, and then the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, وزارة الخارجية, and then the Canadian Embassy in Dubai. So I remember having 3 stamps on my papers in order to apply. Some documents will be required to be mailed by the university directly. The way I used to do it is I used to get the documents from the university, basically a second copy for your degrees, and then put them in a sealed envelope and go to the main building in University of Sharjah. That's the way we used to do it. I don't know if things changed now. And then let them mail it directly to the board. So you have to keep in mind that if any of your papers is rejected or not approved, you'll need an additional 12 weeks for processing. And usually that's very important because the Canadian exams are scheduled to be done a few times a year. So I think 2 or 3 times a year. So basically, you have to make sure that everything is set on time in order to do it at the proper date. All right, that's the same area, another picture of the same area, but now it's in fall. So the nice thing about living in these countries is you get to see all 4 seasons very beautifully. You'll see another picture toward the end in the winter. It's very nice. Okay, back to our process. So we'll start with the first exam, which is the Assessment of Fundamental Knowledge, AFK. It's usually an MCQ exam. There is a web-based self-assessment on the same website that we discussed at the beginning, the ndeb.ca. You can start from there. It's usually consists of 100 multiple choice questions, and upon completion, you will get a score, which can be used as a guideline on how to start studying or where you are. It's kind of testing your knowledge at the beginning. Going through the AFK, as I mentioned, it's an MCQ. It comes in 2 books, usually, during the same day, so morning and afternoon sessions. And you can find all the information about the scoring, passing grades, and protocol on their website. As I mentioned, they usually update it regularly, so make sure to confirm that before you go for your exams. So now that we're done with AFK, or the Assessment of Fundamental Knowledge, you'll have to decide which way to go. As I mentioned in the beginning, there are 2 possible ways to complete your equivalency process. You either go through exams or go through dental school. So going through exams would be starting with the Assessment of Clinical Judgment. Again, it's an MCQ exam, but this time it's a case-based scenario. So you'll get a case with dental history, medical history, some photos of the patient, some x-rays, and some lab tests, and then you'll get set of questions based on this case. It's also MCQs, and you can choose one or more answer for this case. Again, all the protocol, scoring, and references for studying are available on their website for this exam. After you're done with the judgment, you'll move to the clinical exam. So the purpose of the NDECC is to assess the clinical competence of dentists trained in non-accredited programs. So generally, they'll test you on basically everything. They'll do Class 2 amalgam preparation, Class 2 amalgam restoration, composite restoration, Class 4 composite, crown prep, provisional prep, and endo access. It's all done on plastic teeth on a phantom head, just like what we used to do in the lab in BDS 2 and 3, as far as I remember. And the other portion of the clinical exam is the situational judgment. It's usually a case-based questions about some problems that you will face at work, some problems that you'll face with patients, prescription writing. So they're basically preparing you to start practicing in Canada. All right, after you finish the 3 exams, you're ready to go through the certification process. Or if you choose to go to the other way, which is applying for universities and in one of the dental schools in Canada, and then getting into the certification process, it usually includes applications to each of those universities separately, going through interviews and possibly exams for some of them, and then studying for 2 or 2.5 years. And then you'll be graduating just like any Canadian dentist with a DDS degree from Canada. Those are the schools that offer these programs in Canada. They all have their different requirements, different interview process, different deadlines. So it's highly recommended to check their website and contact them if you need more information. In my personal experience, I only tried applying to University of Toronto, Western Ontario, and Dalhousie, and all of them had different process. Some of them had personal interviews only. The others had clinical exams where we had to do clinical testing, basically Class 2 preparation and restorations, crowns, and on plastic teeth again. So it depends on the university. After that, you'll be a graduate of accredited dental program, and you're ready to go through the certification program. Okay, the certification process usually consists of 2 tests, the written and the OSCE. Written is usually an MCQ exam, and it's kind of similar to the first one that you did, the AFK. Whereas the OSCE is more like case-based, more like similar to the assessment of clinical judgment. You'll get, again, cases, radiographs, images, medical history, dental history, and you'll get set of MCQs to choose from. Again, I would highly recommend reviewing their website for more information about the exact format, the references to study from. After you pass, you're ready to work in Canada, basically. You got your NDEB certification. You will start doing your paperwork. Each province has its own regulations and rules, so you'll apply for the certain license for that province and start working. That's what I was talking about, the same area during the winter with all snow. Okay, now we're moving to the specialty programs. Do we have any questions so far, or should I just proceed? Let me check the chat.
Doctor, would you like to take the questions now, or would you like to have them by the end of your presentation?
Up to you. Is it easier to have them at the end? We can do it at the end.
It would be better maybe at the end, so we can compile more questions and you can have them at one go.
Sure, sounds good. All right.
All right.
So let's move to the specialty programs. Generally speaking, these are the 9 specialties that are recognized in the dental boards in Canada: dental public health, oral maxillofacial radiology, ortho, oral medicine and oral pathology, pros, oral maxillofacial surgery, perio, pedo, and endo. Most programs in Canada are a 3-year combined programs, and they're usually combined master's and clinical residency. So you get to do a master thesis, you defend your master's, and get an MSc degree, and at the same time you will graduate with a diploma and your certain specialty. You do a 3-year clinical residency where you treat patients every day in the dental university clinics. You get a lot of exposure to so many patients, so it's a great experience. Again, there are multiple schools across Canada that offer these programs, and each of them has its own regulations and requirements. For example, when we did the pros, we had to do the clinical exam. I had to do a personal interview. So yeah, some personal questions, the usual interview questions. And then I had to do kind of an oral exam where they sit and ask clinical questions. And then on day 3, we have to do a clinical test. We have to do crown preps, bridge preps, provisionals for crowns, provisionals for preps. So it depends on the program that you're applying to and the university. Okay, the things that they look for generally when you apply for graduate schools are your GPA, the most important thing. They say that the minimum is B+ or 76%, but of course, the higher the better. Also, your TOEFL and IELTS, it should be done within 2 years from the application. And again, each university and each school has its own minimum score. As I mentioned, the interview process is different from program to another. Some of them, they just have personal interviews. Some of them have clinical exams. So you'll have to check for the specific specialty that you're interested in and for the specific school. And for international students, yes, you can apply as an international student. Usually, each of these programs have designated seats for international dentists or students. So you'll be competing with other international students. We had a lot of international students from Saudi Arabia. So yes, it's possible. The only drawback is the cost. It's usually higher than local Canadian students. All right, so after graduation from those 3-year programs in specialty, you will go through another examination to be a board certified specialist in your exact specialty. Again, after that, you'll get your certification, you'll do your paperwork for the specific province that you're planning to work at, and then you'll get your license to work as a specialist. Now that we went through all the options and the different paths to get a license in Canada, it's time to discuss some work opportunities to start getting some rewards after all of that hard work. So let's see what are our options. Work opportunities in Canada. Generally speaking, most Canadians that get their license, whether they do dental school or they do their exams, they would start as an associate dentist. Associate dentist means working for someone else. So you would work in a clinic that's owned by another dentist. You would usually get paid on production basis, so percentage of your production. The percentage usually in Canada is between 30 to 40%. Uh, let's say 30 to 45%. And it depends on the area. It depends if you're a GP or a specialist. It depends on the demand for dentists in that area. And the most dentists, after a few years of working in Canada, they would think about owning their dental practice. So they would buy the practice and start working for themselves. Some dentists would buy only one, some dentists would buy multiple practices. So basically, 99% of the opportunities are private practice. There are no government jobs. Basically, it's all private dental clinics. Teaching in dental schools, in theory, it's possible for specialists or for graduates of dental specialty programs, but there are very few limited opportunities. It's not very common. So the most common is working as an associate or as an owner dentist. Moving to work opportunities in UAE. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, I'm not experienced in this area. I haven't done that yet. I might in the future, but I haven't tried applying or working in UAE yet. But for example, from this table, it's from the DHA, which is the Dubai Health Authority. If you get a specialty from Canada, you can go back as either a specialist or a consultant, depending on the experience that you have after graduation. So usually Canadian programs are in tier 1. As a general dentist, if you do your equivalency process and get a dental board, Canadian dental board, or do a dental school in Canada and get your Canadian degree, I believe you would still be a general dentist when you go back to the UAE. You would be exempted from doing exams, the DHA exams and the HAD for Abu Dhabi. You will not need to do the exams for the license, but I'm not sure if there's any other advantage. That's an area that I haven't looked into yet. Okay, we're gonna move to some questions and answers that I got through the Instagram post. Few of you asked about the immigration status and the visa. Obviously, I'm not an immigration lawyer, so usually you would need to discuss it with an immigration lawyer. But I can tell you from my personal experience and from what I've seen around, there are usually 2 options to come to Canada. Either as an immigrant, so you would apply by yourself or through family. It's a point system where you can depend on your degree, age, IELTS score, how many kids you have, and multiple factors, and then come as an immigrant or a permanent resident of Canada and start the process for getting the license or studying. And the other option is coming as an international student. As I mentioned, for international student, there is a specific visa that you can apply for if you get an acceptance from a program, I believe. We had also some questions about cost. So tuition fees usually varies a lot by program and by university. The good thing is they're all available online, so you can check them. Living cost is another factor that varies a lot by province and by city. For example, the most expensive 2 cities in Canada are Toronto and Vancouver. The other cities are way more affordable to live in. I can't give numbers because it depends again, but it's all available online if you want to look it up. I had a question about grants and scholarships. So for people who are here on PR, on a permanent resident card, or a Canadian residence, there are some possible grants from the government, but usually it does not exceed 15-20% of the tuition, so it's not much. And for international students, honestly, I highly doubt it. I don't think there's any grants or scholarships from the Canadian side. I had some other questions about safety. So is it safe on campus? Usually Canadian cities are safe for the most part. I lived on campus in Vancouver, BC, and it was very safe. So from my experience, yes, it's safe. Again, it depends on the area you live at, but on campus, usually it's safe. I had another question about community work. So did community work and extracurricular activities helped in my applications to universities? It definitely does. Anything that you do to add more points to your resume would help. But I would say the most important thing is your GPA score and how well you do during the interview process. Your personality, the way you answer your questions, how confident you are, and also how well you do when they ask you clinical questions and your clinical skills as well. So it's kind of a package, but yeah, it helps. Definitely it helps. So finally, since my specific case is very unique, I'll touch base on potentially working in the US after graduating from Canadian schools. Generally speaking, in the US, it's not like Canada. So in Canada, there is one board that is standard for all provinces and all cities that regulates the dental practice and dental licensing. In the US, it depends on the state that you're planning to move to. So some states, yes, it's possible. I moved to Washington State and I got my license without any examinations. Some other states would require me to do further examinations. But generally speaking, if you're a graduate of a dental school in Canada, whether it's a general dentistry or a specialty, it is possible to work in the US. But you might need to do further examinations. However, if you do only the direct licensing, so just get your license through exams, it's not possible to work in the US. So that's in brief. Of course, as I mentioned, each state has its own rules and regulations, but in brief, that's how it is. All right, and this concludes my presentations. I tried to include the major points and topics, as I mentioned. Obviously, I can't cover all the details. You will have to do a lot of research and seek help and advice from people who have done it before. Feel free to contact me at any point if you have any questions. That's my personal email. And also, Facebook groups are a great help. It was for me almost 10 years ago, but I'm sure it still is. There are so many people who are going through the process, and you'll benefit a lot from others' experience. So yeah, feel free to email me or contact me if you have any questions, and let me know if you have any questions now.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for this truly informative presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I was genuinely taking notes as you were going. So thank you so much. Right now, we have a couple of questions in the chat box. So I'll start by reading the first one. So Lamar is asking, can we start these exams while being in undergrad?
Unfortunately, no, because they need your transcripts, they need your diploma, they need your completion degree. There are 3 documents that you will get on your graduation day, and they need those documents before you can verify, before you can open a profile and start all of the process. So no.
All right. And Sidra is asking, did they require any papers from high school?
No.
Yeah, I hope, because I don't know where to find them. So anyways. So Lamar asked another question, which is, are all these programs open to foreigners?
And when you say all of these programs, are we talking about the specialty programs?
I believe she's referring to specialties, yes.
Probably yes. As I mentioned, each of those programs have a designated seat. For example, the numbers are very low, by the way. So each year they take around 4 residents for each specialty. So it's not much. And usually, for example, from my experience, for PROST, there were only 2 programs in the whole country. And then now there are 3. And each program would take 4, but there is 1 seat or 2 seats in each program for international. So yes, they have designated seats for international students. So you will not be competing with Canadian graduates, which is good. You'll be competing with other international students from other countries.
Yes, definitely, because the priority, from what I heard, goes to the dental graduates from Canada, like you said.
Exactly, but at least you have your designated seat, so you'll be competing with international students.
Yes, exactly. And Marwan asked a question, but I believe you've already answered it in your presentation. So if you get the NDEB certificate, does that qualify you to do the NBDE exams in the US?
Not without a school. So in my specific case, which is very unique. It's not the usual, but because I did some school in Canada, and also I did my licensing through NDEB. When I moved to the US, I did not need to do exams. But if I just do the NDEB and come here, I'll have to do school. I'll have to do 2 years school in the US. So they require you to have some sort of education in Canada or in the US.
All right. And another question from Jenna. How long does the process of equivalency and certification take?
Okay, that really depends. I've seen people, I did it in a year and a half, but that's considered very short. I've seen people do it in 2 years, 5 years. So it depends. Depends how fast you're willing to do them. And it depends how much time you have, how dedicated you are. Of course, the younger and less responsibilities you have, the better. For me, I just went after graduation. So I was just fresh grad. I remember all the information. I'm still in the studying mood. So it worked, but it depends. But it's doable. So a year and a half, I think it would be the minimum.
All right, perfect. And the last question, which is from Reem, is internship year not mandatory?
Yeah, it's not. I did
All,
not do an internship here, and I got a license and worked in Canada and the US, so no.
all right, doctor. If there are any other questions, is everything clear? Or would anyone like to ask any other question? There's a saying in, there's another question. So after completing residency, can we work in Canada or there's more steps?
So as I mentioned, after completing residency, you will go through another examination, uh, again regulated by the board, and it's a national dental specialty examination this time. So they'll test you in your specific area, and then after that, you'll get your license. So from the dental board side of view, yes, you can. Now legally, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about work permits. How does it work? Because I'm not an international, so you'll have to figure that out with the immigration lawyer. But yes, you can work from the dental licensing side of you. Yes.
All right, Doctor, perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Serrat, for joining us today. Truly one of the most requested countries to be discussed, and
Right.
we hope to see you soon.
Sure.
Inshallah.
I was very happy. I was very happy to be invited to this because I've been there. I was very confused when I was a student, and thinking about it is very stressful. So I'm very happy to be help for any of you. Please feel free to contact me. I've helped so many, and I'm happy to do it, especially for US graduates. So just feel free to contact me at any point. If I can be a help, I'll be glad to do it.
That's amazing, Doctor. Thank you so much. We hope you
Thank
have a good night's sleep.
you.
Whatever is left from your night. Yes.
No. Thank you. Have a great day and enjoy your webinar. Hopefully the other presentations will be useful.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
All right. So now our presentation with Dr. Sarra Abdul Latif is over. Now moving on to Dr. Sharifa Al-Haj, who will be discussing opportunities in the UAE and specifically MBRU. So, Dr. Sharifa, can you hear me?
Hello, good morning. Yes, I can hear you. But,
How are you doing, Doctor?
Alhamdulillah, good. How are you?
Yes, it's very nice to have you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I can't open my camera because I'm an attendee still, so sorry for that.
I'll make you a presenter now.
Okay.
Yes, you're a presenter now, Doctor.
Okay, you can see me now?
Yes, we can see you.
So, good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Sharif Al-Haj, a pediatric dentist in Arabian Specialist Medical Center, Al Ain. And this is my story. Back, how can I scroll? I have control, right? Okay. So back in June 2014, I graduated from University of Sharjah, wondering what's next. Where would I apply for internship? Should I continue for specialty right away, or I shall wait for a few years to practice? All those questions were in my mind. After we got our certificates, UOS helped us in applying to MOH for internship. When I explored my options, I applied to Saha and DHA, got accepted, but I chose Saha. So January 2015, internship year, it was full of new experiences. I consider it the most important year, where you get to know the real life of a dentist. You get responsible and committed to do the best treatment. As Dr. Mohammed Al-Shalabi in Al Ain Dental Center used to tell us, this is your last chance to do mistake. So please do, because the only way you learn and never forget is from your own mistakes. So my advice for you in internship year, do not wait for the doctor to tell you what to do. Always show your supervisor that you are here to work hard and gain knowledge. I remember that I used to stay every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., passing by all departments, observing and discussing knowledge with doctors. So one of the doctors introduced us to MFD. We did not know what MFD is. So it is a membership of the Faculty of Dentistry. It's an examination that can be taken by dentists at any stage of their career. There is two parts of the exam. Part one is the MCQs and single best answer. Part two is the OSCE of clinical scenarios. Completing both parts of the MFD, you will be awarded by the membership of the Faculty of Dentistry RCSI qualification. And this helps you a lot in applying for the postgraduate programs. And that's what I did in internship year as a fresh graduate with all knowledge and continuous learning in internship. I passed part one and did part two in 2019. It was a great opportunity to refresh all those information. And if you want to know more about it, you can visit this website. And also you can see in Facebook lots of bank questions. It will help you a lot. So preparation, hard work, and learning from failure is the gate to successful career. So from 2016 to 2018, I was a GP with a pediatric privilege in Saha. I reached a point that what I'm giving to patient is not enough, and I need to specialize. So here, where I started to search for pediatric dentistry postgraduate programs, what I found MBRU website. And specifically the Hamdan bin Mohammed College of Dental Medicine. In the website, you will see lots of details and information needed. So first of all, the postgraduate dental programs, they are all 3 years with almost same admission criteria. And you can see in the website also lots of details about the program, the study plan, and the admission calendar and everything. And even the tuition fees, which is 185,000 per year for international applicants and 160,000 for UAE and GCC. For the admission, you need to do the MMI, which is multiple mini interviews, which is a short independent assessment interview to evaluate communication skills, problem solving, empathy, ethical reasoning, and decision making also. Life in MBRU, it's a full program from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. First year, you will have common courses for all specialty like anatomy, pharmacy, and basic sciences, adding to the specialty courses that you are going to take. And you will learn from highly qualified professors from UK and US. And also they will teach you lots of things like the practical, for pediatric dentistry, we went to GA in Al Jalila Hospital and we experienced lots of the clinical things. And also they will encourage you to do lots of volunteering as well. We used to go to Hilal Ahmar every Wednesday to treat patients there. Post-graduation life, after the graduation, the doctors will help you to, you will be eligible to take the MPEDS, which is the membership of pediatric dentistry in UK. They will help you in preparing you for the exam. It is not really necessary here in UAE to take it, but it is like an add point for you in the CV. After that, يعني, the post-graduation life, it's like you will go check which clinic you will work in. So I decided to go back to Al Ain, and I joined the Arabian Specialist Medical Center as a pediatric dentist. I'm eligible to do general anesthesia and all the specialty that I can do. And also for the license, the clinic helped me a lot in doing the license. For non-locals, they can take the exam for the specialty. When they pass it, they can immediately be a specialist, because like in our university, our certificate, it's you will immediately be a specialist because it's tier 3, but you don't have to wait for 3 years of a GP after the graduation. So this was my experience. It's very short, and this is my contact. If you need anything, I'm ready to help. Thank you so much. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, Doctor, for this truly informative presentation. We all enjoyed the visuals as well. I really love how you put all the details into your presentation. It's very attention grabbing. So I remember when we were doing research for our speakers, we were constantly talking about programs abroad, Canada, US, but we rarely spoke about programs within the country. And I think this is something that is more feasible to most of us, because some of us can't leave for like certain reasons. So I think it's very nice that you shared your experience with us, and it's very, very well structured. Thank you so much. So we have a couple of questions in the chat box, if you don't mind answering. So the first one is asked by Nadine. What do you mean by GP with pediatric privileges from Saha?
Okay, so what happened is that during internship, they saw that I have an interest in pediatric dentistry. So after graduation, when I was a GP, they suggested that I take 3 months of training with a specialist in Abu Dhabi, Dr. Sumaya Rabai. And after that, I was in a pediatric department for 2 years to have more experience in that. So there was a limited things that I can do. Okay, of course I can't do like general anesthesia or nitrous oxide or papoose board, which is clinical holding. It was not allowed to do it, but other things I was able to do. That's what gave me more experience in pediatric before I joined MBRU. And that was a very good point for me in acceptance when they accepted me in the program. So it's
all right.
Not in other.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I think that clarified it for all of us because we all had the same question. So another question by Lamar. Are there paid internships?
Yes, as a local, you can apply in those 3, like MOH, DHA, or Saha, and all of them will be paid.
All right. And a question by Abdulrahman. Is it necessary to do internship here before applying for MBRU?
Yes, it is necessary. And it's from my experience, it's better to have experience as well, at least 1 year. So you will be faster in clinic and you can concentrate more on things that you don't really, you are not experienced in.
Exactly. And another question by Nadeem. So can Indian postgraduate pediatric dentist practice or work?
Like the post-graduation from India?
I believe yes.
Yeah. I'm not really sure, but we have lots of like in our batch there was Dr. Sahana also. She's from India, and she continued in MBRU. She has a YouTube channel if you want to check. She's talking about it in details.
That is very
Contact
nice.
me. I will forward the.
Perfect. And another question by Ghada, which is a very interesting question. So, why did you choose pediatrics?
Yeah.
Because it's one of her choices as well.
Okay. Like everyone asked me this question because in real life, like when you are a pediatric dentist, it's very difficult to treat patients. Extremely difficult. Like why I choose it because I love kids. I love to be surrounded by kids. Yeah, they bring me joy. That's why.
Even if they were in the dental setting, because I know they can be very,
It's like
they
yeah,
can
they will
be
cry.
very,
They will
yeah,
cry. They will do
anxious.
everything. They will bite you. They will
Yeah.
do everything.
You've
But
seen everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
after that, they hug you and tell you thank you. It means a lot.
Oh, it's really rewarding. I can only imagine.
Mm.
So, another question by Nadine. How can we apply for that training, the pediatric one in Saha?
You should be a GP there first,
Mhm.
okay? And then it's like I really showed interest. That's why I'm telling you internship year is very important here.
Mhm.
You should be, and I was staying all day there, like the full year. It's just I go to the clinic. I don't do anything else. So when you show this to them, they really appreciate that, and they see that you are a hard worker. They will suggest that to you. But recently, after I joined MBRU, they opened a residency program in Saha.
Mm.
Like anyone can apply. To be honest, priority for locals.
Mm.
Okay. And when you apply there, they will give you the lectures in MBRU. They have a contract now with MBRU. They will give you the lectures there, but then they have their own exams and criteria of acceptance also.
Of course, definitely. And I believe the last question from Miriam, she's asking, is application for postgrad program in MBRU competitive? And how many applicants do they accept?
It is competitive, yes, because there is also a contract with Kuwait. So there is a contract with Kuwait, with Saha, and also from here, from UAE, and with DHA as well. So they have like some priority for DHA GPs to get accepted as well. So it is competitive, and they accept in each program maximum of 6.
Oh, okay.
Yes, each
And
year.
all right. And another question from Nadine. If we do residency, do we remain GP or is it just more experience?
And the residency program صحة, you mean? I think.
Yes, I believe that is
Yeah.
what she's referring to.
I'm really not sure because the first batch they just graduated this June, so we are not sure yet.
All right.
I think they need to take a Jordanian board first, so
Mm.
they will be eligible to work in Saha as a privilege. Yes,
And
after that, I'm not sure.
I know we're asking you too many questions, doctor, but believe me, it's a good sign. That means we're all engaged with you. So, Nadine is also asking, is the Saha residency program free? And is it true that we have to do the MFD's exam to apply for it?
No, see, like as I told you, because the first batch they just graduated, so there was, like when it's the first batch, still they don't really have.
Yeah.
Yes. So their main thing was like when you take the residency program, you should have the Jordanian board.
Mm.
Okay? But then there was difficulties, especially in the COVID, to go to Jordan and do the board and those things. So what they suggested for them, if you did the MFDS, it would be equivalent to Part 1 Jordanian board.
All right, all right.
So I'm not sure if it's this only specific because of the COVID situation or they will just.
No, I think things will be confirmed this year,
Yes.
maybe. since COVID is kind of settling down. We hope it is at least. So, Doctor, I believe this ends it for the Q&A. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed your
Thank you
presentation,
so much for having
and
me.
we hope to see you soon, genuinely.
Inshallah. Inshallah, sure. Thank you
Inshallah,
so much.
enjoy your day.
You
Thank you.
too. Bye bye.
All right. So just as a reminder, you guys, if you want to check our schedule for our program schedule, I have already sent at the beginning of the chat a link to our USDSA post. It has all the program and the specific time slots for each country and presenter. All right. So now moving onwards to one of the presentations that I was genuinely waiting for, because the representative is very sweet and she is truly, words can't explain. So I hope you guys can help me welcome Dr. Maysoon Zuhair, who is a general dentist, and she will be discussing both Saudi Arabia and Bahrain.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your hosting and everything. And thank you for USDSA for inviting me.
Thank you.
Open the camera now. Let me just. Is everything clear? Are you seeing my slide?
Yes, everything is clear.
Okay, I'll start. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. I apologize if there's construction noises. If you don't hear me well, just let me know. This is Maysan Zuhair, who will be talking about what's next in Saudi Arabia. Also, at the end, I will try to give an insight for Bahrain opportunity. I would like to thank USDSA for inviting me to this webinar to do something that could benefit many. Is a true blessing. It is always a pleasure to be working with the people in our college. I'm still a fresh graduate and new to what's next, but I will try to benefit as much as possible. Okay, first, I will introduce you to myself. I graduated from University of Sharjah in year 2021. During my internship here in Imam Abdurrahman bin Faisal University, I held a position of GDSA president for year 2021, 2022, and currently I'm a general dentist in Saudi Arabia. My story isn't that interesting. I decided to take my internship in my hometown because I was deciding to pursue my career in Saudi Arabia. As for culture and living condition, I didn't really go far, and it's similar in many ways to UAE. Hence, I went back to where I was raised. But I do know a couple of people who lives alone in Saudi Arabia, whether for internship or postgraduate study or job. They will give you different feedback and living expenses experience depending on the city, since SA is very huge. As in dental community, it is quite different than the UAE, surprisingly, but you will get the hang of it and you will get used to it by time. I will say it is very nice that I got the opportunity to expand my connections and dental community outside of my circle. Okay, so US graduate in case A or perhaps US interpretation case A, I've heard and seen a lot of positive feedback from people around me, and they are getting more familiar by time. I'm really happy and grateful for the quality of education US provided. I'm sure you as a graduate will do just fine anywhere in the world. And there isn't much to say about that. Just be confident and work hard on yourself, and inshallah, you'll get there. Extracurricular activity, community work, awards, and so on. All of this for sure will boost your application. Any sector who will see that you're an active person, and if you're confident during interview, they will be interested in you for sure. But in Saudi Arabia, for them to count your volunteering hours, it has to be under official government sector. As seen in the picture, this is a website called التطوع الصحي under MOH, where you can find different volunteering opportunities, and all your hours will be counted automatically in your profile. You have also Hilal Ahmar, and they might also consider other certification, but you have to ask around. But volunteering in general won't do you any harm. You can still add it to your CV, and this will show your social status. For exams, you will for sure need English language. valid certificate, not for the internship, but for postgraduate studies. Second, the SDLE exam, which is the Saudi licensing exam from the Saudi Commission for Health Specialties. This commission is really, really important, where they classify you as general dentist after you take the internship certification and passing the SDLE. Without the classification, you cannot work in healthcare sectors in Saudi Arabia. You can take the SDLE actually anywhere in the GCC, in UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain. And before graduating or during the internship year, you can take the exam actually, and you can take it even BDS 5, ABDS 4. And the passing mark is 56 or 54 out of 100. And for sure, like if you pass the exit, you will pass this exam. It's very easy and only MCQs. It consists of everything basically, but it depends on the day and the type of the exam. So sometimes you will have more endo, and sometimes you will have more rest questions. It's random. You have 4 trials, and if you're planning to apply for Saudi board, you need to have a high mark because it counts as 50% of your acceptance. This is my personal experience in IAU. I took my internship program in IAU in Dammam City, Saudi Arabia. I did my application early on, around January. The most important thing is to have a resume ready. In general, if you're deciding to take your internship outside US, try to start doing your resume from now, as soon as possible. It's an important requirement for your next chapter. Then they sent me the dates for the exams and interviews. It was preparation of the molar and 50 questions, MCQs for the theory. And then, alhamdulillah, I got accepted. Then I paid 18,000 riyals for 12 months. I started July 1st and ended June 30th. So just 1 month ago, I finished my internship. During the year, we had community hours, different clinical requirements. Also, something I really admired, which was intern research project. I'm in the process of paper publication. It was a really great experience, and I learned a lot. For further details about my internship program, please contact me anytime in my social media, and I will be happy to help. So there are 2 ways you can take your internship in SA, whether government, universities, just like what I did, and then you have the MOH. The difference is that in the university, you get to have a full program under academic supervision, but in MOH, you will be paying monthly to different MOH hospitals. You can stay in the same hospital, but you won't always find a spot. There are no requirements and project. The benefit, you will get to move and meet different people, doctors, communities. But for the university, it is new that they accept externals. There is no harm to try and apply to these different universities, Imam Abdurrahman, which is where I went, and King Saud, King Abdulaziz, or Qasim University. Fees are not necessarily the same. Some may be for free or less. As I mentioned, it is still new, so you might be the first external to their program. So for postgraduate opportunities, you have the Saudi board. It is well known, but it is very hard to be accepted, and few seats in each specialty. It is a 3-year program in Saudi government hospitals. After each year, you will have residency exam with the Saudi Commission. I will go briefly. It's a combination between 50% SDLE mark and 30% your GPA, and then 20% your CV. Application opens early on in the year. For the CV, it's a point system actually. You will have all points if you did what's listed in the slide. I think all of it is familiar except the attachment. The attachment is a 6-month training after the internship in the specialty that you want to specialize in. So you pay for each month 1,500 to 2,000 riyals, depends on the place. And then after this training, you will take a certification that you did your attachment. So this will increase your point in your CV. So if you want to take this picture of the university that has programs of postgraduate studies, I'm not really familiar to all of it, I know the people from the universities, but I'm not really familiar except for Imam Abdurrahman bin Faisal University, which is a 4-year fellowship program. I've attended with a lot of residents in this university. I enjoyed assisting and observing. They have ortho, endo, perio, prosto, and they opened this year pedo and surgery. It is quite pricey, but this pricing is for all years, so it's not only for 1 year. Okay, so they had the first endo postgraduate batch graduating this year, so it's still new. And still the Saudi Commission, they don't know what to classify it as, but inshallah they will be as consultant or specialist afterwards. It is a very enjoyable program. I've seen the faculty, I've seen the way they take the exams and so on, and it's very interesting actually. And they have really great outcome. Also, if you want to know more about this, just contact me. But in general, we have those universities that provides postgraduate studies, and most of them are master. Okay, so in Saudi, they encourage GPs to specialize, so they get more opportunities. We have overflow of overflow of GPs around Saudi, unfortunately. It is hard to find a job, but if you worked enough and had faith, you'll find it, inshallah. There is private clinics and academic jobs and government hospitals, but the academic jobs are very minimum and limited. And for private clinics, there is around, and also for private hospitals. For government hospitals, يعني, it is quite limited. Most doctors are looking for governmental sector because there's more stability in that, and I think their salary is more. But I believe private could be a great opportunity if you worked on yourself by taking credit diplomas and workshops. For what's next in Bahrain, fun fact, there's no dental college in Bahrain. So the opportunity there is very limited as for internship program. But if you're planning to work there, they accept the Saudi licensing, or you can take the Bahraini dental licensing, okay, from NAHRA, which is the National Health Regulatory Authority. It's similar to the Saudi Commission, but in Bahrain. Okay, the BDL, you take it after the internship and get the passing mark, which is 60 out of 100. You will have 6 attempts for Bahraini and 4 for non-Bahraini. The only opportunity they have, which is a new program, I've met a couple of people who studied there. The opportunity they have is in SEEF Training Center, accredited by Nahra. In this center, there's a new orthodontic program from Sorbonne University, France. It is the first branch that opens outside the French area, French. It's a 3-year program, and they consider you as a specialist. If you're interested, you can visit their page and read more. They have the center that provide also diplomas and workshop, which I really advise you to take, whether in the center or anywhere in the GCC. Having diplomas and workshop certifications help you in the private practice. Okay, so thank you for listening. If you have any question, please don't hesitate. If I don't know the answer, inshallah, I will lead you to people who are more experienced.
Thank you, Dr. Maysan, for this lovely presentation. And I hope you are ready because we have a lot of questions to answer. So are you prepared?
Inshallah, no worries. Let's see.
All right, so I believe we started from Sidra. So if we want to apply for KSA, do we have to do the board's exam in the UAE first?
No, it's not related. So you just have to do the equivalation of your certification, and then you can apply to any university in the USA.
All
in
right.
the KSA.
All right. And then Lamar asks you, what did you do for your research project?
It was related to prosto. I did physiomechanical and surface characteristic of zirconia 3D printing. I compared it with the milled one, which was like, I think I did 7 tests, but hopefully it will be published soon.
MashaAllah, doctor, it sounds really interesting. Maybe we need to have another webinar just to discuss your research.
Inshallah, if so, I don't mind it.
No, inshallah, I hope it goes well.
Inshallah, and then thank you.
There is another question, which is there a preparatory class to take before the KSA acceptance exam?
We actually have like Telegram groups, and there's notes. Mashallah, people, students all around Saudi, they do like to write notes and like take all the questions and put it in one PDF so you can study those. But actually, the crash courses from our university helped us a lot. I don't know if you know the crash courses that our student made or graduates. It's
I'm
very
not
good.
familiar. Yes.
It's very good. It's a website called Dentoscope. It has like crash courses of all the our lectures, which was very beneficial to me for the this licensing.
I don't know if you saw my face light up suddenly. Like I gave the most unflattering face, but it's because I used Dentoscope so many times and I did not know it was by Saudi students.
And it was actually no from our graduates,
Ah,
US
yes.
graduates. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
there
No,
were
no,
like
it's
two, I
very
think.
useful.
Yeah, it is. I really liked it, and it helped me a lot with my exam.
All right, doctor. So, another question, which is, which Saudi university has the best postgrad program?
Um, As I said, most of them are master, and they're not resident programs, so I'm not sure if you can, يعني, I think it's more in the academic field. But King Abdulaziz University is one of the most famous universities, even it's accredited by USA. So, and then you have the King Saud University, which is in Riyadh. And then the university I did my internship in, which is Imam Abd Hamam bin Faisal University, I really liked their residency program. I was actually thinking of applying there, and their fees is very like pleasing, I think, in a way.
All right, and this is a question directed to you. So, what do you plan on specializing in?
I'm not actually sure because I do like being a general dentist. There's another program that is very known in Saudi, I think more in the UAE, more than the UAE, which is the AGDE program, the General Advanced Dentistry. You can take it in Canada, America, and then there's programs here in Saudi also. I really liked it. So you can specialize in everything basically, but some countries they don't classify as specialist still. They classify as a GP. But if you took it in America, they will consider it as a specialty, inshallah.
Inshallah. And another question, which is, which specialty would you recommend for people who want to stay in Saudi?
AGD program is very good as for private clinics. All private clinics would want you as a AGD. Or you can take the implant course if you want in UAE. There's the ITI program. It's accredited in Saudi, so this will give open for you a lot of opportunities. And then, of course, the prosthodontics. It's very good as in specialty of salary-wise and opportunities. And I would say maybe pedo, because those you will find more opportunities here in Saudi.
Yes, doctor. So now you can take a deep breath in. We're almost done. Okay.
It's fine. It's fine. I'll be happy to answer anytime.
Oh, thank you. So another question, which is, if you did the board's exam in one of the GCC countries, would you be able to directly work in Bahrain?
Yes, for the SDLE, is she referring to the SDLE, right?
I'm not sure. She's just asking about one of the GCC countries' board exams. So this can be like Saudi, maybe. This can be like UAE.
So the Saudi board is not like an actual exam like America and the Canada. It's a program. But if you're talking about the Saudi licensing, yes, in Bahrain or in UAE, it is accepted. So you can ask the government, MOH, or anywhere you're gonna work in, and just make a double check on that. You can take the exam anywhere in the GCC, so I'm sure it's valid.
Perfect. And how much experience is it required for general dentists from other country to practice? So let's say I believe this is what they mean. So if you're coming from a country that's outside the the KSA or Bahrain, for example, do you need any work experience or do you need anything to add to your resume in order to work?
I'm not really sure about that, but in general, like I've looked into UK universities and the required 2-year experience. And we have like different sectors, but for hospitals, private hospitals, they will require experience, like 3 year before being a GP in it. So it depends. Like, I'm not really sure about that, actually.
All right, doctor. I believe that is it for the questions. There is a saying in Arabic which is sukut alamat al-rida. So I believe if no one is typing in the chat, that means everyone understands everything.
Inshallah, you're a good host. Wallah, I liked you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maysan. It really means a lot. And thank you for joining us today.
Anytime. If you
Truly
need
enriching.
anything else, I'll be here, and my social media is open for anyone who wants to ask. I'll be happy to help. I will also lead you to people who is more experienced, but thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, doctor. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye. So everyone, I just wanted to thank you so much for attending. Of course, we're not done yet. We still have the UK, we still have Sweden and the US. All right, so we're just going to be taking a brief break and then we're going to be coming back. All right, so a brief 30-minute break. I hope you all had a wonderful break, a bit of a refreshment. And now we're going to continue our program with the next country, which is the United Kingdom. Now, I would like you to help me in welcoming Dr. Zahra Hamiduddin. Dr. Zahra, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Yes.
Hi,
How are you
everyone.
doing, Doctor?
Good. Good morning from London and good afternoon from the UAE, I guess.
Good morning. I hope it's not too early in the morning.
No, it's 9. It's fine.
Perfect, perfect. All right, so I'll leave you to your presentation.
All right. I think I will share my screen. I don't know who's sharing, but I will share. Just give me a second.
Doctor, if you want, there is a button that says Take Control. You can click that and toggle through the presentation freely.
Okay. So can everyone see it? It's just there, right? So can I just like click next?
Yes, if you click next, it's supposed to change for everyone.
Okay, cool. Fine. So hi, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, for a lovely introduction. And thank you to the USDSA, of course, for having me. Obviously, from the title, I'm going to discuss the postgraduate studies in the United Kingdom. So I'm currently a postgraduate student in King's College London. I'm doing a master's in pediatric dentistry. I'm actually almost done. I have 2 months left. I'm just going to talk you through the process in general and then share a little bit of my experience throughout. Of course, I started in 2019, which was right before the pandemic. So it was quite an interesting 3 years of my life doing postgraduate and also going through COVID. So to start off, I always like you guys to ask yourself this question if you're embarking on the postgraduate journey, in terms of the way that you live your life, in terms of the specialty you want to choose, in terms of whether or not you want to live abroad, whether or not you're able to, leave your family. All of these things you have to put into consideration. And also you have to put in, plan A, B, C. We always have to plan, and it's okay if plans don't work out in the end. It's not the end of the world. And it's also important to do something that you're passionate about because it can get pretty tough. For me, I didn't know there was a pandemic that was going to come. So, I had to be really passionate about what I wanted. But I know a lot of people who couldn't continue and they actually left. So you never know, what life is going to throw at you. So once you know what you really want, it's going to help you with your, with your next steps. So I wanted to start off with the different pathways that are available in the UK. I'm going to talk in details about the postgraduate pathway, which is what I'm doing. And I'm just going to go briefly over the CCST pathway and the licensing pathway. So the CCST pathway is basically a specialty training, which is mostly done by the home students or the British students that are in the UK. So basically, they do first of all, you have to do your internship after you graduate, of course. But you are able to take this pathway as like a foreign international student. If you're going to do that, then you have to do the ORE exam, which is, I believe, the overseas exam. And there's a part 1 and 2. And then once you pass those are GDC exams, which is the General Dental Council here in the UK. You have your GDC number or your license number, and then you can start the dental core training, which is 3 years. And then depending on the specialty, you can either enter the specialist training there and continue as a specialist and work here. It's a very long pathway. And I believe one of my colleagues, Dr. Hisham Ashraf, spoke about this last year. And he spoke about it quite like in detail.
Doctor?
Anyway. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but the slides are not changing. Is this... yes. So,
I'm not sure, because it says here live sync to presenter, so I don't know what that means.
Wait, did you click the take control button?
There's no take control button.
There isn't. Would
Should
you
I
mind...
just share? Yeah, I'll just share.
Yeah, I think that would be better.
Thank you for stopping. I wish you stopped me earlier.
No worries. I thought this was this was part of the presentation.
It's fine. Can you guys see it now?
Yes. We can see it.
Okay. All right. So I was here. I hope you guys aren't lost now. Anyway, so I was talking about the CCST pathway, and that Dr. Hisham is the one who did it last year, and he spoke quite about it in detail. The third pathway is the licensing pathway, which is basically doing the licensing dental examination. And it's done not by the GDC, by the Royal College of Surgeons in England. And there's a part 1 and a part 2, but I think now part 2 has become 2 and 3. So it's also quite challenging, and there's not many seats, every year. And it is an option, but you just have to have all the information. And obviously, I'm not one to speak on these two pathways because I'm just giving a brief, and it's not the pathway that I have chosen. Obviously, if you want any more details, I can share links with you later on. So I'm going to start talking about the postgraduate pathway and just talk about the main entry requirements in the UK, basically, for dental specialties. So obviously, first, you're required to have an undergraduate dental degree, and then at least 2 years post-qualification experience. And honestly, it's very important to be exposed during these 2 years if you're planning on doing a postgraduate pathway. I would do things like general anesthetic, and just build your skills in general dentistry, I would say, and also build confidence in working on your own without supervision, because we're always so used to having supervision and checking our work with someone else. So I would use these 2 years just to be more confident with my own work. And then obviously the English proficiency exam, which is the IELTS. They don't really prefer TOEFL here because it's an American exam. You know how the British are anyway. So IELTS is, each university is different in terms of the scoring that they prefer. For me, I believe it was an overall of 7, I think, and then a 6.5 for each band for King's. So it wasn't very high, but other universities require higher. And the personal statement is very important. It's a very important part of your application. So take it really seriously, take time in writing it. You can also ask some of your colleagues or friends who are studying abroad to maybe take a look at it. Academic and professional reference. So academic references is any of your professors at uni, And professional is maybe later on at work, when you're working professionally, you can ask for them for a reference. And then just a simple, CV that just has all your information and everything that you've done. So other things that I wanted to press on, obviously the first thing they look at is your personality. If you're likable, it makes it really easy for you to just get into the program. Your portfolio, it's good to keep cases and document your work over the 2 years that you're going to have some experience before you decide to join a program. Membership exams, like the ones that the Royal College give, like the MFD, the MFDS, these do boost your application, but I wouldn't say that they're like a requirement. They are not. Obviously, extracurricular activities, community work, all of these things really, really help. Also, like outreach programs, if you've been anywhere to help out, mention that in your CV and also in your application. And then UK visit is, I would say, one of the tricks to getting accepted. So actually visiting and requesting like a tour or asking to meet with like the program director of the universities that you're interested in. It really, really helps you to get accepted, because they find that you're very, driven, and you're actually serious about your application. So for me, I had a quite, different way of getting accepted. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what happened with me. So it was actually like the opposite. So I went to the UK and I asked to visit, and I hadn't been accepted, or I hadn't even like put in my application. So I met with a program director, and she basically gave me an interview, and I didn't know I was having an interview. And then in the end, like, she asked me to send in my application, and 2 weeks later, alhamdulillah, I got an acceptance. So that's why I say personality and actually visiting are really, really important. But obviously, with each person, it's different, and with each university is different. I'm talking about King's, and I'm talking about my experience. So if you're going on a website to look for a program or anything, these are the things I would say to look out for on any university website. So the first thing you want to look at is the awarding degree. So whether it's a master's degree, and then they have here something called MClindent or DClindent, which is MClindent is like clinical masters, and the DClindent is a doctorate. So it's more based on research as well. And a master's also has research, which is what I'm doing. But it's a 2-year program. The MClindent and DClindent are 3-year programs. Then the study mode is important in terms of like, is it full-time, is it part-time? Mostly dental, specialties are full-time programs. And then the duration, obviously that helps you decide and plan. So is it like a 2-year program, a 3-year program, etc.? Mostly, as I said, they're 3 years. And then the IELTS score, you want to know what score they require. And obviously the application opening and closing date, so you know when to submit your application. And then in terms of all of this, you really have to know the qualification system in your country, like the tier program and the requirements. So for me, I know that if I do a 2-year master's plus a 1-year clinical training, and then I take a board exam, I go back to Saudi, I'm automatically a specialist. I know this because that's where I'm going to work. But it's really, really important for you just to know what kind of tier system you have in the country you're going to work in. So that's why I say it's really important to know what you want and where you want to live in the beginning before you go on this journey. So I wanted to talk a little bit also about like moving to the UK and things to look like, things you would expect. So obviously you need a visa, and it's what they call a tier 4 visa. It's a student visa. And you just apply through the UK government website. It's very straightforward. It's just an online application form. And then I did mine on my own. Some people use like services that do visas, so you're welcome to do any. But I found it quite straightforward, to be honest. And then housing and accommodation, I would say, so I'm talking about London in specific because I live in London and I'm not sure about the other cities in the UK, but housing and accommodation in London is very, very challenging. So I would really, really plan ahead and try to start looking for, properties and things like that in advance, like a few months in advance. Cost obviously depends on every person's lifestyle, but as we all know, London is quite pricey, so you have to put into consideration that your expenses and everything won't be like where you are back home. I think it's much more expensive, but there are a lot of ways for you to like cut down on things and different places where you can get bargains and things like that. I think with living here, you'll start to know how to save up. But overall, I would say it's quite costly to live in the UK. And then in terms of transportation, I have to say it's a big change from having a car because it's really difficult to drive in London, very small streets and very crowded. So mostly people use public transport. And I use public transport. It's something new. It took me a lot to get used to. You have to really, really leave early before your class and everything, before clinics, because you never know, like if the bus doesn't show up or something happens or there's a strike. So there's always things that you have to look out for in terms of transportation. I know some people, like some of my friends do have a car, but they really, really struggle with like parking and things like that. So I would say the most convenient, in my opinion, is the public transport. And that's about it, really. Thank you so much for listening. I wanted to go over the questions that were posted, I believe, on the USDSA Instagram page. But then I'm sure there are other questions that people want to ask. So I'll just So someone asked a very interesting question, and it was, I am a hijabi. Is it safe for me? Yes, it's very safe. It depends on where you live. You have to choose, obviously, a safe neighborhood. But I've honestly, like, whoever knows me, I'm a very adventurous person. I go everywhere. Like, I go to different cities, like I take weekend trips. I'm always like jumping around, walking around, and even during COVID, I would just go down and just walk everywhere. Like I'd walk like 20,000 steps and walk back home, and I wouldn't like use any form of transport except like my feet. And I've never honestly faced anything that scared me, or I felt like, I wasn't safe. London is very diverse. There's so many hijabis here, so many Muslims. There's a huge Muslim community, and it's very touristy. There's a lot of people all the time, so you always feel safe. I'm talking about London again. I don't know about other cities in the UK. What else? So yeah, someone asked, working in the UK as a GP dentist from UOS. I think they mean like, can you work as a general dentist in the UK? Yes, and you would follow maybe the other pathways for licensing or the CCST pathway. If you don't want to specialize, you can do the licensing pathway. Interview questions, honestly, because I didn't have a generic or, the normal interview process. It was mainly just her asking me about what I've done, exams I've taken, where I've lived, where I want to live later, things like that. But other people who had actual interviews, so my friends or things like that, they had like to submit their portfolios and cases and everything. So you have to have like a portfolio ready. And then what else? Someone asked, working in the UAE as a postgraduate from the UK, transitioning. Honestly, I can't say because I'm not going to live back in the UAE. I'm going to live back in Saudi. So just make sure you understand the tier system in the UAE and, you plan accordingly. And I think that's it. Work opportunities for foreigners. I think that also falls under the licensing pathway. So yeah, there are, I believe, work opportunities, but I'm not sure because I took the postgraduate pathway and I'm not going to work here. So yeah, I think actually someone just wrote board exams, but I don't know whether they mean, the ones before or the ones after. So I'll just talk a little bit about the ones after. So after, for me, because I'm a PEDS major, so after I'm done with my training, or during the last year of training, I have to sit an exam called the MPEDS, which is given by the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh. And it's basically an exam that makes me qualify as a specialist back home. And also the specialty training dentists here, like the UK home students, actually take this exam also to become specialists. So it's quite a big exam. And there's one for every specialty. So there's like the M-Orth, M-Endo, depends on the specialty. I think that's it.
Thank you, Doctor, so much for this enriching presentation. Honestly, talking to you feels like talking to a family member. And I don't know if you get that a lot, but you have very, very a warm way of delivering information. So that's
Thank
very
you.
nice. We also have a couple of questions here in the chat box. So I'll just read them out for you. So the first one is by Lamar. What type of things did you mention in your personal statement?
Okay, so I spoke about, oh my God, I'm trying to remember. So I basically wrote about how I decided that PEDS was for me. So I spoke about a patient who, after that patient, I decided I want to be a pediatric dentist, which is true. So I spoke about the whole process of, behavioral management and her coming in really scared, and then in the end, it just felt really rewarding to me. So I think just making it seem very genuine and so don't make it something that's not real, but at the same time add a little bit of, I don't know how to say this in English, but baharat. A
little bit of spice, yeah. Something to make it stand out.
A little bit of spice, to make it stand out, but not in a way that it's not untrue to you or your personality, and make it personable to you, like what you would sound like in real life, because it's a personal statement. So they want to see you in there. That's what I wrote. I basically wrote about an experience that led me to choose the specialty.
So Lamar also followed up with another question, which is, what are the main things that we should include? So basically, from what you answered, we need to basically highlight one of the experiences that made us go in that direction or in that career pathway.
This is what I did. I wouldn't tell everyone to do that. Everyone has their own way of expressing, but I felt like giving us a story or a background story helped me get into why I chose this, why I would like to be a part of this program, obviously, because also I visited the university, so I wrote a little bit about how I really loved the clinic setup and how, London was exciting for me, and I was excited to move to a city and things like that. So there's a lot you can add to it. I don't think there's like a, bullet points of things you should or shouldn't add. It's just up to you.
All right. Sounds great. So the next question is, how important are extracurriculars?
Okay, I would say they are important, but they're not everything. So honestly, they look at your personality like the most, I would say.
All right. Yeah. So the next question is, what kind of membership exams do they require?
They don't require membership exams. It's a plus if you have it. I had the MFD. I did the MFD part 1 and 2. It does help, but it's not everything. And also another thing, I didn't have in terms of what's the word? In terms of experience, I had a year and a half of experience, but they still accepted me. So it really depends on you. Like every application is different.
I get you. From what I'm getting from you is that they look at applications subjectively rather than objectively. There is no like
Yes.
set criteria that they look into.
There is a main set criteria, which
Mhm.
is what I mentioned, which is like, for example, if your IELTS score is not high enough, obviously they have to be objective about it,
Yeah.
you know. But in terms of the extracurricular and the add-ons, yes, it is quite subjective.
All right. The next question is, can we do internship in the UK after graduating from BDS 5 in UAE?
To be honest, I'm not sure, but I don't think so. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think it's better to do your internship before you come to the UK. That's what I would.
I think
That's
so
what I
because
would advise.
yeah, it makes sense because you need to add a few things on your resume, like you said. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All
Anyways,
right.
you need experience to be accepted in a program. It's not like other countries where you can just, as a fresh graduate apply, because in clinics you actually have to you have to do all the work in clinics. So it's really important for you to be quite confident because the consultant just comes in and signs some papers and leaves. They speak a little bit to the family, but they don't do the work. You fill out all the forms and you speak to the parents and you send them for x-ray and
Yeah,
so
exactly.
yeah.
I think you indirectly answered another question that we had, which is from Hiba. She's asking, we don't need to do an internship here in the UAE. So in a way, you said it's better to do it in the UAE, then move to the UK. Is that correct?
I mean, it depends what pathway they want to take. So if they want to do an internship and then move and get a license and work in the UK, then yes, by all means. But they want to study, they want to do the postgraduate pathway. They can't just move here and unless they're going to work. But that you have to do an internship before you come, I would say. But I'm not 100% sure whether or not you can do it here.
All right. And the next question is, would you recommend doing masters in the UK for everyone? Or is it not meant for everyone?
I can't fully answer that question because I'm talking about my experience and my opinion. Obviously, I mean, some people don't eat tomatoes. I eat tomatoes. I can't. It's that kind of thing. I mean, I had a very weird experience, but I still love it. I was locked down for a whole year. I didn't see my family, but I was still fine. Some people would not be fine with that. It's very nice. It's a very nice place to live. London is very, very cool. But again, yes, of course, it's not for everyone. It's very fast paced. Very, very. It gets quite overwhelming sometimes. To be honest. But maybe other cities which are more less cities and more countryside, have a slower pace. Maybe that's something for them to, I guess, research and choose.
And again, like you said, it's based on each person and what they can accommodate to or what they like.
Yes. But did I have a good experience? Yes, alhamdulillah. I had, even with COVID, alhamdulillah, I had a good experience.
Alhamdulillah. So, doctor, we have 4 more questions, and then I promise you I'll let you be in peace.
I'm fine.
So bear with me. So,
we're here
the
to help.
next question is also from Sidra. So, what's the difference between Masters in Postgraduate Pathway and the CLST pathway?
What's the CLST pathway? You mean the CCST pathway?
I believe yes. The CCST.
Okay, so the postgraduate, you have to do a degree, you have to study and everything. The other pathway is mostly training, but you do have exams. Every once in a while, you have exams, and you have to do a lot of audits, and you have to do publications, and you have, because it boosts your, this is the CCST, it boosts your application to be, because basically as a dental core trainee, when you're doing your training, you do it in different specialties, but I think you choose the specialties that you'd like. There's 3 specialties or something, like, I'm not sure. I'm just talking of what I know. Okay. So you do this, you do the different, specialties, time, and just like the internship. So time in different specialties. And then in the end, you apply for a specialty program, which is like if you want to do peds, if you want to do oral surgery, whatever. But during that time, to boost your, application, you have to do a lot of like work. It's quite a lengthy pathway, I would say. It's very long. It's much longer than the postgraduate pathway. That's the biggest difference. Postgraduate is usually 3 years maximum.
All right. And another question from Reem. So, what did you do in the years prior to starting your postgrad?
I was working in Saudi. I worked for a year and a half. And I also did my MFD. What else did I do? I attended conferences and things like that. Not much, I would say, but that's what I did. I was just working in a private clinic.
All right. And last 2 questions. So, does internship count as part of the 2-year work experience?
No. No. So internship plus 2 years.
All right. And the last question is your program a paid residency?
No. No, so I have a scholarship from the Saudi government, and that's how I'm paying for it. Obviously, tuition is very high for international students, so really keep in mind. I'm not sure about like scholarships that you can get from the university, but yeah, it's quite different for me because I do have a scholarship. So.
I do understand. And we have another question. So, how is the tuition? Hiba is asking. And she's asking if we can have a range. So,
a range? Yeah. So it's like, no, it's not a range. I know how much it is. So it's like £50,000 a year. So you would do 3 years. So that's £150. This is just the tuition. And then there's your life,
housing, and
housing, accommodation, housing, transportation, your day-to-day, whatever, groceries, bills as well. It depends on the type of contract you get. Some contracts, like housing contracts, have bills included, some don't. And also, obviously, there's student accommodation, which is quite, I would say, cheaper than regular, flats in London.
Yeah, and I can't imagine in London specifically. I bet accommodation is pretty expensive. Yes.
Yeah.
So
it's really expensive, to be honest. And I was lucky because I was here during COVID. So I moved during COVID. So the prices were very, very low. But now everything is back to normal. So
unfortunately for you, I hope the prices go low again, but not for COVID. So thank you so much, Dr. Zahra, for giving us your time and joining us today. And it was really lovely chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
And we genuinely hope to see you soon.
Inshallah. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you for having me. You too.
All right, everyone. So we finished the UK, and now we're going to move on to Dr. Ruba Badr, which will be representing Sweden. So, Dr. Ruba, can you hear me? Doctor, I believe she's having connection issues.
Yes.
I can hear you. Do you hear me now?
Perfect. Yes, yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
So how are you
Hi.
doing, doctor?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. It's such a pleasure talking to you. I remember contacting you first time on the USDSA page, and I'm like, please, please say yes. Please say you can join us. So I'm
Oh,
really glad you made it today, and I'm
thank
really
you.
excited to hear your presentation. So
Thank you.
I'll leave the floor to you.
Of course. Thank you. Will you be sharing the PowerPoint?
If I think it would be better if you can share the PowerPoint so you can navigate through it freely. But if
Yes.
you'd like, we can share it as well.
I could do it. There we go. I'm not that experienced with Microsoft Teams, but I'll figure it out. There we go. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. We're all set. Are you seeing the proper screen or the whole presentation?
No, we're seeing the entire screen.
Okay. So you're seeing just the slide?
We're seeing the slide and the entire PowerPoint page.
Okay, I think this is how we fix it. Now we're good?
I still see it as the PowerPoint page. Maybe
Yeah.
try clicking the button, which is
Yeah, I'm on it
we're
now
starting
on
the
my
slideshow.
screen, but it sounds like you guys are stuck on the other screen. I feel like I'm exactly like, you know, when the older people are.
Believe me, me
You
too.
all like lectures. I have no idea how to use electronics. I feel like I am exactly that person now. Microsoft is just different for me. Let's see. Well, how about you share it then? I feel like I'm
All
trusting
right.
it.
Sure, no worries.
Okay.
We'll share it now then.
Thank you. Like you've got more experience. See, I'm too old already.
No, believe me, Microsoft is a hassle to deal with for everyone.
All right. Well, so quick introduction. Ruba's my name. I studied dentistry in University of Sharjah, and I graduated 2019. I pretty much immediately then moved to Sweden, and I started the process of getting licensed here. And I got my license a month, 2 months ago. So this was very well timed. Sweden, if you look at the map, the first slide that I put there was right up there. There you have it, the dark green. Up north, it's Scandinavian, it's cold. I like it because it's very, first of all, I was born and raised here, so I kind of had a cheat way in. But second of all, I think it's a very beautiful country and a lot of things work very well. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see a picture that I have taken of Stockholm City. And Stockholm City is made of several islands, and they usually call it the Venice of Scandinavia because it's just a collection of islands and a lot of water, and it's really pretty. So if we go through the process, it does look pretty. I agree, Lamar. Now, the first thing I did was, I would say the first thing you have to look at is where do you want to live and work? Some people I know would travel to certain countries just to do a postgraduate program and then move back to their own countries. You will know in a bit why I would not really recommend using Sweden for that, because the pathway for getting a postgraduate program or licensed here is really not easy and very complicated and very long. So it is not something I would recommend doing just to work somewhere else. There's probably other countries that would have easier and maybe more practical ways. However, I would recommend this if you're looking for living and staying in Sweden, if you're looking for the whole life here and working as a dentist here. Now, if we start by asking why Sweden, I was born and raised in Sweden. I lived here for 15 years before moving to the UAE. The plan was that we would live and stay in the UAE, but after being there for 9 years, I realized it was not for me. And I think when we came to the end of our education at UOS, you start thinking about where do I want to work? What do I want to study? Where do I want to keep developing my career? And that's when I realized I don't want to stay working in the UAE, and I was looking at other countries. And I did know the language in Sweden, yes, but that was not the important part. The part that weighed more was the fact that dentistry in Sweden is very developed. Karolinska Institutet, for example, it's the dental school in Stockholm, is the #1 dental school in the world today, and it has been for the past, I think, couple of years now. They are very developed in terms of research, and the system here is very, because of the taxes and all that, the whole country has a very equal system where people are as equal as possible, and where dental care is for kids free, and for elders it is paid for the majority. So I just felt like my morals aligned with that, and as a dentist, this is the type of country I want to work at. So that is just to answer briefly why Sweden and why I started looking into it and thinking about it. The next thing I did was looking at how I can get licensed in Sweden, because the thing about dentistry is you need a license to work wherever you land, and it's not easy to move around. And in the UAE, for example, I saw that you've got about 4 licenses, at least at the time, like in a very small area. For example, one in Abu Dhabi, one in Sharjah, one in Dubai. And that felt very limiting for me, someone who would want to have the opportunity to eventually move around a bit. While in Sweden, if you get licensed, this license does apply in the majority of the European countries. In all the EEA countries, for example, you can get like a proper list online of every country that's included. But for example, Italy, France, Spain, Switzerland, and the list goes on. So for me, that felt like a huge plus and a huge bonus, because it widens my horizons and my possibilities looking forward. So how do you get licensed in Sweden? The first thing I looked at is this website. It's called legitimation.socialstyrelsen.se, and I took a screenshot of the English version. This website is very easy and very straightforward, so I would recommend anyone who is curious about the process to just look into that. It shows you exactly step by step the process, but I'll also go through it with you now. So there are 2 pathways to getting a dental license in Sweden. The first pathway is, if we go back to that slide, thank you. That's the first pathway. The first pathway is that you have to learn the language, yes. You start by sending in an application for them to assess your education. So I sent in all my papers, the entire syllabus from the US, and they looked at it and they approved it within, I think, a month or so, a month and a half. They send you an email that basically says your education is assessed and approved. And this is just a way for them to see that what you've studied is equivalent to what they're looking for here. The next step is that you have to take a test. Now, I would say this was probably the hardest step, because this test is a very long and very thorough exam. And you've got a theoretical part, and then you've got a practical part. The theoretical part and the practical are all in Swedish. Now, since I was born and raised here, I have the advantage that I knew the language, but I know a lot of other people that had to go through a lot to learn the language and be able to take the test. And even though I was born and raised here, I did not know the dental terms in Swedish. So I had to basically relearn all of dentistry in Swedish. And there are websites. If anyone has any questions, just let me know. I'll give them to you. There are really good websites that are posted by the government that have summaries on every dental topic. So I use those to study. There's also books and libraries, but I would say the websites are the easiest, most straightforward way, and very summarized and to the point. So they show you exactly summaries of every single topic. I started studying and studying and studying, and then I took the exam. The reason that whole process has taken me so long is because the exams kept getting cancelled because of COVID. So I feel like the theme here today is that we all went through the pathways during COVID times and like how that affected us. The good news are you guys will probably not have to go through that. But COVID hit, right before my exam, and I got an email, I remember, a week before the exam, and they were like, well, the exam is cancelled because the exam is done in Stockholm. People are traveling to the city from all over Sweden, even from abroad, and the risk is way too big of spreading COVID. So exam got cancelled. I started working as a dental assistant for it, evened up to about 2 years. In the meantime, until the exams were starting up again, and I did the exams while working, and then passed the exams, and then we'll get to the rest of the story. But focusing on the steps, you do a theory part, and then you do a practical part once you pass the theory. Now, the interesting part here is that you're only allowed to take the theory exam 3 times, and you're only allowed to do the practical 3 times. If you fail it 3 times, then you're just not allowed to do that pathway again. So I passed the theory, you pass the practical, and what's left in this pathway then will be 6 months minimum of clinical training. What that means is you have to look for a job at a clinic. You get paid a salary, but it's quite minimal. And in those 6 months, they assess your clinical work. And if it's good and sufficient, you get licensed in the end. So that's pathway number 1. Do exams, study a course in the laws and regulations too. That's a pretty easy course, I would say, though. You can do it online. It's not complicated. You do the 6 months of clinical training minimum. Sometimes it becomes 9 months. They assess and they change it accordingly. And then finally, you get your license. Pathway number 2, if we move on to the next slide, is that you undergo what we call kompletterande program, which is like an extra education. Now, these programs are basically 1-year programs. They are done either in Karolinska, which is in Stockholm, or in Göteborg Universitet, which is in Gothenburg, or in Malmö, which is in Malmö, south of Sweden. And it's a 1-year program that focuses on both the theory and the practical, and just summing up all of dentistry in 1 year. It's very intense, it's very hectic, but the idea is that you get licensed by the end of that year. And within it is included a lot of clinical training as well. Now, to get into that program, you of course need to know the language. You need to do a theory exam. In fact, the same theory exam as per the new rules now. And you need to do practical exams as well, and an interview. And once you finish all of that, you will be assessed and they will see if you get in. And you also need to have, you need to prove that you know the Swedish language. So you need to have Svenska 3 or Swedish 3, which is a certain level. It's a course you take and then you're done. Now, since I already knew Swedish, I did not need to take that course. However, I still had to do an exam to prove that I know Swedish. And in my case, it was actually a bit more difficult because my passport is Swedish only. And as a Swedish person, then I am not allowed to take the Svenska 3 exam, but I had to do TESOS, which is like a more difficult exam. But don't have to worry about that. It went well. We were done with that step. So what happened in my case? What I did was I was like, I'll approach both pathways, and the door that opens will open up. So I'll just work on both. And that's exactly what I did. I did the exams for both. I passed the exams for both, but mind you, I had been preparing a very long time at this point because they kept getting cancelled. So I passed all the exams, and now basically I had 2 options. I applied to Karolinska because I live in Stockholm and I like the city. And if we go to the next slide, I can tell you a bit more about the application process to Karolinska and what the statistics are. But first, we can look at how pretty Sweden is. So this is the website for Karolinska. It's really nice. I like the sunsets here. This is the website for Karolinska. You can go on there and get all the information you need, really, if you'd like details. But what I can tell you is that it is very, very, very competitive. The program I'm talking about in particular, the kompletterande program, you start by finishing all the exams and all that, sending in your application. After you pass the theory, you get called in to do a practical exam and an interview. And that's what I did. And if we look at the statistics for how many people get in through this, now this is all in Swedish, but I'll translate it for you. The statistics is from last year, so it's very recent. And you can see that the amount of people that, if you look at the bottom one, the bottom row is for dentists. The amount of people that applied to Karolinska were 286. The amount of people that were taken in and accepted into the program were 16. So it is a very competitive program, and there's a lot of dentists in Sweden trying to get licensed. And I was one of those 16. So that was an honor, and it was a very good experience. And at the same time as I got in, I had gotten my results from the other exams, and it had turned out that I also had passed them, and now I was allowed to do 6 months of clinical training if I so wish and take the other pathway. So I was kind of left with the choice. I got quite lucky there. What I did was I started the program at Karolinska while also looking at the opportunities for jobs for the other pathway, just to know what options I've got. And I ended up deciding to stay at Karolinska because I felt like it's a really good school. If I got the chance to get in despite these odds, then I'll take it. And I felt like this was a very good way of getting into the system here very properly, despite I've already had these 2 years of experience working as a dental nurse. So that's what I did. I got into Karolinska and I chose that pathway. I started studying last autumn, and we finished about 3 months ago, and I got my license soon thereafter. I'd say the advantage of this pathway over the other one is that you're pretty much guaranteed, almost guaranteed, that you'll get your license when you're done. The other one, it kind of depends if you got lucky with your clinic and with your, what's it called in Swedish, in English? So that's the downside of living here for 3 years now. I've forgotten a lot of words in English. I used to be good. But handledare is the Swedish word, and it's basically the person who's in charge of keeping track of how you work in the clinic. Sometimes you get not unlucky with a very mean one, I've heard, and then they can really extend those 6 months to 9 months or a year. So I felt like this is quite safe and to the point what I wanted. So that was the pathway I took. And if we move on to the next slide, here are some pictures I took from this past year. This was from the vårsittning, which was like a spring dinner party thing, and these were my classmates. The one in the middle, for example, is from Libya. The one next to her is from Egypt, so people were from all over the world. If we take a picture after that, I can show you another picture of my class. This is us in the emergency clinic. And the people with the blue shirts were our teachers and nurses. And this was near the end of the year. So everyone is friends now, everyone knows each other. In the beginning, I think things were a bit more stale. Moving on, let's talk a bit about the visa application process. I do not have a lot of experience with it since, as I said, I was born and raised here, so I did have the passport. So for me, it was just moving back. However, just to explain it briefly, you can go into this is a screenshot of the embassy's website. You can go on there and read in details, but normally people just take a student visa. If you start working here, you can get a work visa. The advantage of the work visa is that I think it's a bit more permanent than the student visa. But that's pretty much it. Also worth mentioning regarding the fees, the program that I studied, you do not pay for it, it's for free. But that's also probably because we're all Swedish citizens by that point, because you have to learn the language to even be able to get in. But as far as I believe, and as far as I know, it is for free for everyone. However, feel free to double check that information on their website. because internationals usually pay a lot. But in this case, we're not really internationals because we're going to be working in this country and they're going to be getting that money back through our taxes. So moving on to the next slide. Here's another picture of Sweden. Now, this picture, I remember, if you are a fan of the Northern Lights, as I am, and if you've been curious to see them, this year, we've been quite lucky in Stockholm. And apparently we've been seeing the Northern Lights. Like, I think it came about 4 times, 5 times during winter, which is very often for the central city. Now, the problem, though, with being in the central city is all the lights from the city. So this night, I remember I was on my way home. It was like 8 p.m. or something, and I was working early the next morning. But I got a text from a friend saying the Northern Lights are showing tonight. So I remember running into Central City, the highest spot where everyone goes, and I see people standing with their cameras. And I'm thinking, I gotta catch the Northern Lights. But this is what I caught. And I don't know if you guys see the Northern Lights. I barely do. Maybe there's a faint hint. But I thought it was interesting. That was just a little pretty thing to look at. Moving on to the next slide. If there is any next one, or this might have been the last one. I think it's the last one. Yeah. So I can go on to going through some questions that I got from you. And then you guys can also start asking questions in the chat if there's anything you're wondering. The first question was board exams. And that's what I explained, the theory exam where you have to study everything within dentistry. I can tell you the exam is, honestly, the questions are things you should know as a graduated dentist. So they're not crazy questions. I'd say the more difficult part is really just learning everything in Swedish, also learning it as per the Swedish rules. In Sweden, there is something called Nationella riktlinjerna for dentists, and they're basically, it's a very long PDF document that is posted by the government, and it tells you the exact recommendations for what treatments you should do in what case. And it's important to follow that particular recommendation when you do your treatments, and also for the exam. Next question was, do we have to learn the language? Answer, yes, you do. Work opportunities for foreigners. If you're a foreigner working in Sweden, you have good opportunities, but I'd say there's a lot of weight on you knowing the language and on you being social, of course. But I feel like that applies in whatever country you land, so it's nothing weird there. Why Sweden? I have already answered quite early on in the presentation. Then there was a question about working in the UAE as a postgraduate from Sweden. I am not in that position, so I cannot answer from experience, but I can say it is very good money going from Sweden to the UAE because Swedish graduates, especially from these universities, are very popular in the UAE. And I know this because I know Swedish colleagues who have moved to the UAE to start working there as dentists. As for cost range, since Stockholm is the big city, of course, it is not cheap, but I would say there is a very good balance between your salary and your living costs. So even if you do the most basic job, it will be sufficient for you to be able to pay your living costs. I feel like that's a bit of a problem from what I've seen in the UAE, that I don't feel like there's a very good and even balance. People have to depend on a lot of income to be able to live. But here I would say it's very even. Next question was visa and citizen application, and that's through the embassy. And then there was a question about working in Sweden as a general practitioner dentist from US. So I've been working now for a couple of weeks as a dentist, and I would say I love it. I would say every day I wake up and I realize I've definitely chosen the right profession. I can tell you though, it is very stressful, but I think that's the way dentistry is wherever you land. Some things about the system here that are different is that we have something called Försäkringskassan. And Försäkringskassan is basically the segment of the government that helps pay a huge bunch of the dental treatments for citizens. So, for example, if a patient comes to me and they are 23 years or younger, dental treatment is for free. However, I can't just do things. I have to have very good documentation. I have to document very clearly why I'm doing what I'm doing. I have to have very good reason to drill in the tooth. I'm not allowed to drill just because I found that to be a good reason, but I have to document my reasons. I have to write it in my journal. I have to, you have to personally, like as a dentist, it's on you to be able to send in the correct information to the government about what treatment you've chosen, why you've chosen it. Yeah, it's a whole system, and it's very complex, and it's very detailed, and it's huge. There are people that have lost their license because they weren't able to keep up with this. You have to be able to also charge patients correctly. Nothing is under the table. There's no receptionist does it for me. I have to be able to do it in my room to put in the correct everything in the system and to charge them correctly. So I would say that's the complicated part about working here, just keeping track of all that. So in the beginning, you'll need a lot of administration time just to like fix all the patients and all that, and just get your head around it, and get used to writing so much about every detail you've done. But you get used to it. I'd say it's fun. And you definitely meet all different types of patients, especially if you choose to work a bit further out from the city. Then you will really see a huge variation, especially now with the whole Ukraine thing. There's a lot of people from Ukraine who've come to Sweden, and a lot of them are in need of like a lot of dental help. Next question is off-campus safety. I find Stockholm to be a very safe city. I have been out and about at all possible hours of the day, and I like it a lot. But of course, like every other city, you have to be aware and you have to be careful. But there is nothing I would say that's crazy. Also, you choose your areas, but in most places it's very safe. Interview questions. The interview questions were interesting. And now I'm talking about the interview questions at Karolinska. They were, I think they just put a lot of weight on your personality. They ask things about what you're interested in. They ask things about why dentistry. They asked me what I felt like was the difference between Swedish dentistry and dentistry in Dubai. And I feel like that's a huge question that they always love to ask every single time. And that's mostly it. Sometimes they might ask you how you would handle certain situations in the clinic, but I think they put a lot of weight on your personality and how you conduct yourself. Next question is, did extracurricular or community work boost your application? And that's the last question I have on my list. I would say if you're looking at doing extracurricular work, do it for the personality development you'll have from it, because that will give you a huge boost in how you are as a person and what you want to do and experience and how you handle situations. And I feel like that is what you really gain from these. I was very active in USDSA back in the days, and I love that. And I'm so happy I did it, because studies are important and your grades are very important, 100%. But I feel like university experience is very unique, and you really want to make the most out of it. And USDSA has just been such a good community, and I met amazing people through it when I was so active, and you learn a lot. I learned a lot about teamwork, and I learned a lot about guiding a group, and I learned a lot about creating events. And I feel like that taught me a lot in personal development and how I became as a person and emotional intelligence and all of these things. And I feel like that's what you really gain. But as for my application, I'd say I've heard a lot of compliments about the fact that I was so active, not just in USDSA, but like generally, I had a lot of things that I like to do, and it showed on my CV. But I don't think that was the biggest way. I think what weighed the most is your personality. And I think I've heard more compliments about the fact that I smile a lot in interviews and the personality click that they feel. But also another tip would be, I think if you're looking for something that would really if you're just focusing on your CV and what would raise it, then I think research papers is a good place to focus on, because that usually weighs a lot, especially if you're looking at doing postgraduates. And I think that applies to all countries. Now I've talked a lot. I'm going to take a sip of water while you guys proceed with any questions that you have. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this answered the most of your questions. And if you have any more, feel free. Feel free to contact me too if you need any more questions, because I don't know how we are time-wise here. I believe they posted my Instagram, but otherwise there's also my email address. It's ruba.badr with double A, so BAADR @gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ruba. I'll first of all start by thanking you for giving us some lovely scenery of Sweden. It was really nice seeing Sweden in the morning, in the nighttime, all cases. So we have a couple of questions here in the chat box. So if you don't mind answering them, then that would be really nice. So our first question is from Abdulrahman. He's asking, were you immediately able to work as a dental assistant in Sweden?
The answer is yes. Getting your first job is difficult in any country, but I got lucky. I landed a job in a very small private clinic, and we still have very good touch, like me and the dentist there. She's an amazing woman. She offered me a job there as dentist later on, actually. So create contacts is the key. I was able to do it immediately, yes. The salary was also quite generous, since they knew that I was a dentist and I was doing this quite temporarily. And I would say that was such a great experience, because I've learned so much as a dental assistant, because you're working, you're getting a salary, but you're also within the dental field. So you start learning so much about the system. And I would say this actually probably weighed a lot when I was applying to Karolinska. They want to know that you have some kind of experience within the field here. So yeah, you don't need a license to do it. You can just do it.
All right. And the next question is, in comparison to other countries, how selective would you say Sweden is with accepting dental applications from internationals?
Dental applications for, like, as a dentist to get licensed?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Well, I would say you saw the statistics for, like, Karolinska, for example. I'd say it's quite selective. But it's also because they have limited seats. Since it's a program that you do not pay for, but the government pays for, they need to make sure that who they're accepting in is probably going to bring them back money through taxes. Like, that's the truth. That's really what it revolves around at the end of the day. So I would say they're probably not going to be very fond of picking someone who doesn't seem to be wanting to stay in Sweden. Probably more focus on someone that seems to be a bit more settled in the country.
All right. So another question from the same person is, other than Karolinska, which university would you recommend in Sweden?
I mean, for dentistry, the options are really just 3 universities, and I would say all 3 are good. Gothenburg University is also one of the top universities in the world when it comes to dentistry. Karolinska is number 1, and it's in Stockholm, so for me it was quite a simple and straightforward choice. Malmö, I've also heard, is really good because they have a lot of hands-on experience.
All right. And then we have a few more questions, so bear with me, okay?
No worries.
Thank you. So if you get a license in an EU country, would you be able to work directly in Sweden?
As long as the license is recognized in Sweden, the answer is yes.
All right. And you said we can find a list of the countries that are...
Yeah, I'm sure you can Google it. I don't have an actual website now, but I can look it up for you and send you a link.
No, it's all right. We can easily Google it. Okay. So another question, which is there a Swedish language proficiency test? If so, what is it called?
Yes, it's called Svenska 3 or Swedish 3. That's the level you're required to do. Usually people take a course through Komvux, and that's like a university for adults pretty much in Sweden. And if I'm not mistaken, you could also do that online. Or you could take private lessons in Swedish and just choose to do the exam.
All right.
Yeah.
And the last question, which is, did you find a difference in the knowledge level compared to the Swedish GPs versus US GPs?
Very good question. I like the fact that that's the last question. That's a very good question. Very interesting and juicy question. I'd say, thing is, if you have someone who's good at what they're doing and passionate about what they're doing, they're going to be good at it no matter where you put them. Whether it's in US or in Karolinska, it doesn't matter. But that's not to say that every single person at Karolinska was so extremely smart and did all the treatments. And it's also not to say that every single person in US was so extremely smart and did everything correctly. So I'd say it's very different, it's very different. It's very hard to generalize. But if we look at the level of education, because that is something I can assess a bit more properly, I would honestly say that the education level we get in the University of Sharjah is really good. And I'm saying this very generally, because coming here, like I had just finished my degree there and I was studying for the exam here, I did know all the information. Maybe the only things that were different, actually, this was huge. This was big and very annoying. Here they focus a lot on problems with the jaw. So like now I forgot the English terms because my brain has switched dentistry from English to Swedish. It's hard switching back. But you remember the jaw problems? Like in the UAE, I remember it's like, oh, if anyone has any jaw or clicking problems or the TMJ, the TMDs, all you do is kind of just like send them for someone else. In Sweden, there's a huge focus on that because it's a very common problem. Another thing that's very much focused on in Swedish dentistry is orthodontist. Like you need to know ortho very properly. I remember that was the biggest one for me in the exam. I had to study ortho a lot because I felt like in the UAE it's very brief and you do not need to know much at all. But in Sweden, you need to have a lot of knowledge about it. For example, fun fact, there's so much weight on you checking when a patient comes who's between 9 to 13 years old, you have to palpate the canines. And if you don't do that, so many have lost their license. Like it's such a detail, but like these are the things you learn in Swedish dentistry that aren't there. So it's very interesting to compare the two worlds. And some treatments are different. They are very, very careful with giving antibiotics here. But as I said, personally, I like the system here because I feel like it's very organized and structured and everything needs to have like a proper clinically researched base before you do a treatment. You can't just do a treatment. You have to be very well researched and back it up with so much knowledge and documentation.
Exactly. And we have the last question, I believe, which is, did you do an internship in US?
I did not. Because for me, I knew I wanted to do dentistry in Sweden. I knew I wanted to move here, and then God knows what the future holds. But for now, I felt like this is where I want to be. And doing an internship in the US would not have changed my application one bit. So I did not do it.
Perfect. And doctor, this is one last question from me to you. Do you miss the USDSA? Or are you happy that you got rid of it?
I didn't get rid of it. I mean, things are very different. I'm older now. I'm too old to be doing that stuff anymore. No, but I mean, I feel like now life has just become very different. I'm a lot more focused on documenting and writing my journals and doing the treatments. So I would not have time for USDSA that way, but I'm very fond and happy with the experiences I've had and the connections I've made through USDSA. And like they'll always be dear to me. And I'm very happy I did it. And I feel like whoever's active in USDSA today, like I hope you really make the most out of it because it is fun. And yeah, document it for fun, not for any license things, just document it for your own fun and enjoyment. It's really nice to look back at the pictures.
Exactly. Yeah. Doctor, it was really nice talking to you today. And genuinely, your smile is infectious. So now I know why everyone in your interviews was commenting about your smile. So yes, it was really nice talking to you today, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you guys got the answers you needed. And good luck with everything. You guys will do great. Everything will be fine. Enjoy the whole process. It'll be nice.
Thank you. Thank you. It's the journey that counts, not the destination.
Exactly.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move on to our final speaker for today. Since our speaker is already here, it would kind of be pointless to take a break. So might as well just have him. You know him. We all love him. Dr. Omar Al Abd. Can you hear me, Doctor?
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing great. It's a
Yes, good
pleasure to be here,
afternoon.
and thank you so much for the invitation, Rada and the USDSA. I didn't hesitate a moment when I got the invitation, especially when it comes to students. You guys all know me, and you know how big I am on education. And most of the participants are actually my friends or people I interacted with back in UAE. And I was talking to the USDSA team before the presentation. I told them I am homesick, so this came in just in the correct time. So without further ado, I'll start off the presentation for you guys. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, Doctor, we can.
All right, perfect. So today I'm gonna be talking about what's next, but from the USA this time. It's around 5 a.m. here in Buffalo, New York. This is where I stay and where I'll be staying for the next 2 years, so until I finish my program here. Yes, I'm talking about the States today, but I am from my beloved country, Egypt. You always have to go back to your roots every now and then. And you guys know Egypt. I always have this slide when I'm presenting any big presentations, especially here in the States, just to let them know more about the Middle East and Egypt and our culture, especially our sports, because they don't watch a lot of football here. They call it soccer and they don't watch a lot of football, so I have to introduce one of the best players in the world, Mohamed Salah. I'm pretty sure you guys know him. And other sports that we play in the Middle East, like tennis, squash, volleyball. So I graduated from the University of Sharjah, same batch as Dr. Ruba, who was our previous speaker. And hi, Ruba, I hope you're doing great. Graduated in 2019, and then I did a postgrad diploma in aesthetics and restorative in 2019 as well. So I did that during my senior year of dental school, and then moved on to internship at our university hospital, UDHS, 2020. And then I was a clinical tutor at our university in 2021. This was the transition period from UAE to the States in Buffalo here. And I'm currently a second year prosthodontics resident in University of Buffalo, New York in the United States of America. I started in 2021. I'm doing concurrently also a master's in oral sciences, which is also an option you can do while doing your specialty programs in the United States. And I'm a current member of the American College of Prosthodontics, the American Academy of Maxillofacial Pros, and the International Team for Implantology, which is also known as ITI. So, of course, I have to advertise for my specialty. Pros is a great field. If you guys are interested in pros, you can contact me and I can go into details on what we do in pros. Most of the stuff we learn about prosthodontics in our undergrad years are the bare minimum, 5 to 10% of what prosthodontics actually is. Especially nowadays, the process is moving towards implants and implant-supported prosthesis, whether it's single units or overdentures or the fancy fixed dentures or hybrid prosthesis. It's a big field, very creative field. You get to do many things. So whoever's interested in pros, they can contact me and they can further elaborate. And of course, I can't start without mentioning that I was once part of the USDSA and I'm still am. I was the head of scientific committee of USDSA and the conference, the 8th ISDC. And the picture on the right there was my executive committee. I think Muhammad Musa is online, part of participants. He's one of my brothers, first person I met in UAE, I must say. I always learned many things from him as a president and as a friend. And also, I don't have a picture of her, but my co-head, Helia, she's also a participant here watching me right now. It was a pleasure actually working with Helia, great individual. And again, I was talking to the USDSA just before the presentation, and they asked me what was your proudest moment of USDSA. I told them other than the conference is actually watching Helia grow from first day to last day. Hopefully, she's going to be one of the leaders of our field. So jumping into programs in the United States of America. So there are many programs here, or many pathways to get to the States. The first pathway is called the Advanced Standing Dental Programs, or the IDP programs. These are basically 2-year programs, and you're basically repeating the last 2 years of dental school, but in the United States of America. So this is just like BDS 4 and BDS 5, but you're doing them here in the United States. Other programs are called GPR or AAGD. These are basically similar to our internship programs. They're also 1 or 2 years, and the difference between GPR and AAGD is that GPR is more hospital-oriented, more trauma cases, and AAGD is more of university-oriented. I'll be talking about these during my presentation as well. And then you move on to your clinical certificate or residency program, or the way we like to call them back home is specialty programs, which are basically prosthodontics, periodontics, endodontics, etc. And then you have the master programs, which are, again, programs that are research oriented more than clinically oriented. So the difference between specialty or residency and masters is the residency program is a clinical program. So you see patients nearly every day, and master programs are research oriented. So you don't see patients, and if you do see patients, you're just shadowing, you're not working yourself. And finally, combined programs, which is basically clinical residencies, so a specialty program and a master program, and you do them at the same time. And most schools here in the States, they do that. Start off with the advanced standing programs, or the last 2 years in dental school here in the UAE. Again, there are many synonyms for these programs. They call them IDP, or International Dentist Programs, or ITDP, and they lead to a DDS or a DMD degree and facilitate the licensure process to practice in the United States. Do you need to do these programs in order to specialize in the United States? No, you don't have to, but an advantage of doing these programs is that they're going to open for you the opportunity to work in all the states here in the USA, while doing a specialty program or going into a specialty program straight without doing the advanced standing program opens only multiple states, but not all the states. And I'll be talking about what opens what later on in the presentation. Again, these programs are 2 years, some of them are 3, very competitive programs, many students apply, and general requirements are the IMBDE, which is the Integrated National Board of Dental Examinations, TOEFL exam, ECE or WES evaluation, and CAPID. And I'm gonna go through what every term of these mean in a while. So ADE CAPID is basically a portal which is made only for the IDP or the advanced standing programs. It's basically like a portal where you upload everything that the school asks for, such as your experiences, CV, personal statement, certificates, awards, and of course letters of recommendation. And then you upload them into this portal, and this gives you the opportunity and makes life easier when you apply to multiple schools, because all you have to do is upload everything only one time and then just select the schools you want to send your documents to, and with a single click it sends it to all the schools. So again, ADEA CAPID is only for the advanced standing portal, or in other words, this portal is only for repeating the last 2 years of dental school in the United States. In general, how to stand out as an applicant for such programs. Of course, you have to clear the examination requirement. IMBDE is one of them, and you have to do the TOEFL exam. Some universities, for example, Rutgers in New Jersey, they take into consideration how many times or how many attempts you do before you clear the exam. Some don't really care about the attempts, and they just care about you passing the exam. And IMBD, by the way, which I'll be talking about soon, is just a pass or fail exam, so there is no numbers involved. And something that will make you stand out as well is the experience you build in terms of what you gather dentally before applying to such programs in the States. Basically, they want to know that you're passionate about dentistry, you really want to do this, and you're not just doing this for the paperwork or the certificate. Again, it's a very competitive program. Over hundreds and hundreds apply, and they take around 20 people. And basically, how it goes is you start the program with your other fellow IDP students, which are 20 approximately, and then as soon as you finish the summer program, you jump in and join in with the class, the BDS4 class, and then finish off the BDS4 and BDS5 to get your DDS or DMD certificate. And one of the most important things are personal statement. Again, personal statement, the recommendation I always give to anyone who asks me about personal statement is you don't want to be just writing it thinking about what the other person wants to read. You write it as put in your personality, put in your creativity. They want to know who you are, and the more personal it is, hence the name personal statement, the better it is. Some people think that it's better to write what the other people is or the other person who's reading the presentation, the personal statement, such as the director, write what they are looking for. This doesn't work because everyone or many people do that, and when the director or the person who's reading the statement reads it, it's just another statement that he read during the day. He's not going to remember you at all. So my advice for that is just make it personal, make it creative, put on your own creativity. So when the person reads it, they remember you. And again, just like any application process, you need letters of recommendation. Some universities ask for 3 recommendations. Some ask for 5, but most ask for 3. And some as well ask for a recommendation from your dean from your dental school. And the last step for applying for such IDP programs, or the last 2 years of dental school here in the States, is preparing for your interview and doing something called a bench test, which is basically some practical exam where they get to test your skills in terms of operative dentistry, through fillings, endodontics, through access cavities, and again, our root canal treatments, and prosthodontics through crown preps. And they're all bench tests, meaning that they don't involve patients. You're doing them on mannequins. Now we're done with the IDP or advanced standing programs, which are again the last 2 years of dental school here in the States. Now moving on to something called GPR and AAGD. These are basically similar to our internship program back in UAE. They can be 1 or 2 year programs, and some very, very minimal are 3 years. And you're basically doing advanced general dentistry. So similar to what we did in internship, but more intensive. Especially with the GPR, you're more in a hospital-based environment, and there are many maxillofacial and trauma rotations. Again, the advantage of doing such programs, GPR and AHD, is that they give you somehow experience of how it feels like to work in the States, plus they open up some certain states. They don't open up all the states, but they open up a good amount of states that I'll be mentioning later on. Again, the ADE Capit, which I mentioned is a portal to apply for the IDP or the advanced standing program, is also the same portal where you apply for the GPR or AHD programs. Now moving on to application to dental specialties. National Commission boards in the States here identify 12 specialty programs. Most of them are the ones we know back home: endo, ortho, pediatrics, perio, pros, oral medicine. They have multiple oral and maxillofacial programs specific to certain areas such as pathology, radiology, surgery, and some as well are pediatric dentistry, OMFS programs. And how to stand out as an applicant for such programs? Again, just be yourself, show them that you're passionate about what you want. Experience is, of course, important, but experience is not everything. For example, I'm the youngest here in the program in terms of residents, not only in PROS, but throughout the whole residency programs in Buffalo. And youngest meaning you have the least experience out of everyone, but if that was how they select applicants, then people wouldn't have made it here. So just show that you're passionate. They look for someone who's passionate about it. They look for someone who's ready to take the challenge, and someone who's actually easy for them to mold and make them the way that they want you to be as a dentist. Because you know, the older you get, the more experience you get, it's the harder for them to change you or change your habits. That might be great habits or might be bad habits. So some programs like to take young individuals which are have great potential and show passion in order to mold them into the specialists they want here in the United States. So the application portal for specialty programs is different than the application portal we talked about earlier. The one here for specialty programs is called ADEA Pass, similar to the ADA CAPID, but the difference is this is a larger centralized application portal. Again, you upload everything onto this portal, and then you can choose the schools you want to apply to in terms of residency or specialty programs or the master programs. This is how the website looks, and this is actually something pretty cool that I wanted to share with everyone. It's basically the PASS search engine. What you can do here is you can go onto this website or just type into Google ADA PASS search engine, and then it gives you the opportunity to put in what specialty you're looking for, and then search it up. It will tell you the programs available for that specialty, the contact information for the program, the deadlines, general information about the program, the faculty, the director, sometimes the residents too, and the application requirements, what they need in terms of TOEFL, MBDE, GRE scores. So it's a pretty handy tool if you're looking to specialize in the States. It'll make life easier for you to organize yourself and see what schools may accept international students. Most of the schools do for specialty programs, but some schools, they only take people from the United States. So this will make life easier for you, and it's a great tool, at least in the beginning of the application process, because you're gonna search up your specialty and then find 30+ schools, and then going through the schools, you start filtering out based on pricing, based on requirements, based on if they take internationals or not. So it's a good place to start, I guess. So I'm gonna go through the general requirements and what requirements are required for every route. Many things we have here on the screen. We have the TOEFL IBT exam, GRE exam, IMBD exam, and then the portals I spoke about, which is IDA Pass, IDA CAPID portals. And then you have the match system, and you have something called ECE or WES, which are degree equivalency systems. You also have something called DENPIN, which I'll be going through just now. DENPIN is basically your ID here as a dentist in the United States applying to any program. So no matter any program that you're gonna apply to in the States, whether it's a last 2 years of dental school, a specialty program, or AGD or GPR program, you have to do a DENPIN. DENPIN is basically your civil ID here in dentistry. So every applicant has a DENPIN, and you keep your DENPIN. You'll need it throughout the application process. And this is the first step of applying to the States, is creating your DENPIN. And then you have to do something called ECE or WES, degree equivalency. And this is basically you send your transcripts, or you ask our school, for example, UOS, to send the transcripts to either ECE or WES. They're both competitive companies here. What they do is just they convert your transcript into a United States transcript, so everyone is on the same kind of page for them here to choose from. It standardizes everything for the director and the faculty to have a look at your grades, because some schools use GPA, some schools use percentage, some schools have other grading systems. So this makes life easier for them here. They convert your degree into an American degree, only on paper, so you don't get an American degree, but it's only on paper for the schools here to go through. And this is required again for all programs. Moving on to the TOEFL IBT, again, it's required for all programs here in the States. TOEFL IBT is 4 parts: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Competitive scores, most programs, they say it's 90+ out of 120. But what I've seen here and what I've heard, if you get 100+, this is where the real competition starts, and they like the 100+ scores more than the 90+, even though 90+ is sufficient for you to apply to any program here. Moving on to the IMBDE, previously it was called MBDE, and it was 2 parts. Now it's integrated, and it's called IMBDE. It's needed for advanced standing programs, ortho programs, and pediatric programs. And some but not all perio, pros, endo, and AGG GPR programs required it. So depending on what you want to do, if you want to do perio or pros, some programs don't require the IMBDE. But if you're going to do for ortho, pediatrics, maxillofacial, or advanced standing programs, this is a requirement. So the purpose of this exam is basically to assess the basic knowledge of the dentist here. It's similar to our exit exam back in US, but there's no any practical component here. They test everything in dentistry. Very, very intensive exam. They just want to make sure that you know your basic knowledge and it's safe for you to practice in the United States. This is not a license exam. This is just a step that is required for you to get the license. It's a 500 question exam. Back in my time, I did it when it was 2 parts. So MBD part 1 and part 2. Part 1 was basically medicine. Part 2 was dentistry. But now, since it's an IMBD or integrated exam, they mixed them both into one exam. Again, 500 questions divided into foundation knowledge areas, which are basically direct questions about specialties in dentistry. And then you have clinical scenarios and clinical content area. It's not a hard exam, but the key for this exam is basically stamina. You have to maintain your stamina throughout it all. It's a long exam, 500 questions. 2 days, total of 12 hours and 30 minutes, split on 2 days. This also includes the breaks and the lunch break that happens in between the day. So the key for this exam is knowing your basics, and I believe US prepared us very well, just like how Dr. Roba Bedr mentioned. You'll be surprised how good or how well we are trained in US when you move to the States or Canada or Europe. So the key here for us, at least, is stamina and having your own technique and maintaining that stamina throughout the whole exam. So just for basic knowledge here for you guys, if you're interested to do the IMBDE, you can talk to me later after the presentation. I can go into more details, but this is the basic prep kit for IMBDE exam. They use dental decks here, which are basically study cards or flashcards, super easy to use and full of pictures, so it makes it easier for you to understand and memorize some stuff. You also have a book called First Aid and have YouTube videos called Mental Dental videos. These are different sources. Personally, when I studied for this exam, I used a mixture of all sources. Some stuff I found helpful in the dental decks, and other stuff I found it more helpful watching videos on YouTube through the Mental Dental channel. And basically, the key for IMBDE is not knowing everything, but having the general knowledge about everything. So you don't have to go into super details, for example, in pharmacology, but you have to know the basics. For example, you have to know your anesthesia, you have to know your pain medications, cardio medications, and especially here in the States, they use lots of antidepressants. Also, those medications that are not allowed to be prescribed in the States, and why are they not allowed, and what do you do when patients are on such medications? These kind of stuff, general knowledge is acceptable, but if you're going to go into something like endodontics, operative dentistry, they could ask some pretty deep questions. There are also some practice questions applied by the GCNDE, which is basically the board of directory for this exam. It's available on the website. You can go into GCNDE website, and they have some old practice questions for you to get exposed to how questions are asked and how the difficulty of questions. There's also an application on your mobile phone, which is super helpful, called MBDE Mastery app. I use that a lot. It's a way of learning through answering questions, and most of my studying was actually from that application. Moving on to something called the GRE exam. GRE exam is, first of all, it's not required for most programs here. It's mostly required for orthodontics. Some, but not all perio, pros, and endo programs and pediatrics need it, but most or nearly all ortho programs need this exam, and it's not required for most IDP programs or the advanced standing programs or AGD or GPR. So if you're thinking about doing ortho or maxillofacial surgery, this is a solid requirement. It's basically an exam that includes English language, writing, mathematics, science, and some kind of IQ questions, puzzling questions to see how you think, how you can solve problems. The scale of the scores here is 130 to 170. Most of the top programs here in the States, they like the mid to high 160 scores. It's nowadays, especially after COVID, it's available to do online. Before COVID, you had to do it in centers, and the centers are available to do in most countries. By the way, something I forgot to mention about the IMBD exam, you can only do this exam in the United States and Canada. It's not available to do outside of the States or Canada or generally North America. But for GRE, you can do it in any country. And after you've done your exams, you've done your personal statement, your CV, you got your recommendations ready, and you submitted them either into the IDAA CAPID for the advanced standing programs or the last 2 years of dental school, or you want to apply for a specialty program and you apply through the ADA pass. The final step of the process is the match process. This is basically where you, after getting your interviews and assessing the schools that you interviewed at, you start ranking your programs in terms of which program you want to be at, which program you liked more. And of course, in order to participate in this match system, you have to have gotten interviews. If you don't get any interviews, then you cannot participate in match. So after your interviews, this is where you start ranking your programs. And the ranking doesn't happen only from your side. It happens from the school side or the director's side from the other side. So they rank their applicants. You rank which school you liked more in the interview. And then basically you match through an algorithm and a mathematical algorithm. And then after the matching process happens, this is where you sign all the paperwork and accept the invitation, accept the offer from the school. And then this is where the fun part starts, which is basically the paperwork and moving to the United States to start your program. Again, this is the final step in any pathway you take here in the States. If you're going to go for general dentistry or for applying for specialty programs, it's one intensive day. It could be the day where it may change your life in terms of education. And I like to call it the day is where you win or learn, because if you make it, you won. You're gonna come here to the States or Canada to for education because you've worked so hard to make it here. And if you don't make it, it's a learning process. You just know that what you have to improve at, because they'll tell you. Some directors will send you an email and they'll tell you this is what we liked about you and this is what we wished you had for us to accept you. So that year that you don't make it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You just apply again next year, and you can use that 1 year gap to improve again your CV, improve your dental experience, and reapply. So this is a table I really like. It basically tells you what opens what states. To start off with, the advanced standing programs, or again the last two, repeating the last 2 years of dental school in the United States, opens up all states here in America. So after doing the 2 years, you do the license exam, and then you can get access to work in all states in the United States. Then now moving on to AGD and the specialty programs. So Minnesota, you don't need any additional education required. You have to do paperwork in order to work in Minnesota. So you can come to the States, do paperwork, and then get licensed in Minnesota. The process is long, but you don't need any kind of prior education in the States. And then you have the second category, which is limited internship or faculty license, which is available in multiple states like Kentucky, Nebraska, Tennessee. And this is basically, again, you don't have to have any prior education in the States, but you're allowed to work only in the dental school itself, and hence why they call it limited license or faculty license. And then moving on to the programs I spoke about today, which is the GPR or AGD program. If you do 1 year of GPR or AGD, it opens up Virginia for you. If you do 2 years, it opens up around 8-9 states, including Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Oregon, Virginia, Washington, and Wisconsin. And specialty programs, if you're coming straight to the States just to do specialty programs, which is my case here, 2 to 3 year specialty program, it opens up multiple states like Nevada, Oregon, Texas, Virginia. The whole list is around, I think, 10 to 12 states. And so here again, you can do GPR or a specialty program without doing the 2 years of dental school in the States. But the advantage of doing the 2 years dental school in the States, again, the last 2 years, is it gives you the opportunity to work everywhere in the United States. But if you don't want to do them and you just want to go straight into the advanced programs and specialty programs, you get the chance to work in the States, but it's a bit limited. And finally, the last category here is license by credentials. This is basically after you start working, no matter which category you land in, after multiple years, depending on the state. Some states say 5 years, some say 10 years. You start opening other states. So basically, for example, if you only do a specialty program here, and you have 12 states to work in, after 5-10 years, you can do something called license by credentials, and you can work in extra states like Alaska, Colorado, and Chicago, and New Mexico. I was also sent a couple of questions by Dania. I'll quickly go through them. First of all, board exams. Board exams, in terms of terminology, board exams can mean two things. Can mean the IMBD exam, which they call the national board exam here, and it can mean the board exam that you do after doing a specialty program, such as the Canadian Board of Prosthodontics, for example, or the American Board of Prosthodontics. By the way, if you specialize in the States, you're eligible to do both the United States boards or the Canadian boards. And moving back to the Middle East with either boards, it's the same tier. Both are tier 1. So in terms of the level or the strength of the prestige of either the United States boards or the Canadian boards, it's similar for both in the Middle East and in general in the world. So board exams, again, it can be a specialty board exam, which is done after your specialty program, or it could be the IMBDE, and it's not an actual board exam, but it's called the National Dental Board Exam, just for general purposes, because some people misinterpret the MBDE or IMBDE thinking it's an actual American board. But it's actually not an American board. When they say American board or Canadian board, they mean the specialty boards. Work opportunities here in the United States, it's huge because the states, United States, 50 states here, every state, different requirements, different specialties are needed in different states. So work opportunities in the United States, I would say, is more than in the Middle East. And working in the UAE as a postgraduate from the USA, again, haven't been through the process, but knowing friends that graduated from the USA and they moved back to the Middle East or the UAE, they told me it's a very pleasant experience in terms of prestige and the way they're respected as graduates from either USA or Canada. In terms of cost, it depends on where you do your program, and in general, the more fancy the city is, for example, if you're going to talk about Boston or Nevada, California, these are the expensive cities, so tuition goes up, living cost goes up. In comparison, for example, to Wisconsin or Chicago, a bit less cost compared to California, for example. Grants and scholarships, most schools in the United States, especially for people coming in as international students, they don't provide grants or scholarships. Some do, but they're very, very limited, and most of them are again designed for USA citizens. In terms of visa application, student visa is the best, of course. As soon as you get accepted, your school is going to contact you and follow up with you and help you out with application for a student visa. And this is the visa you move around with here in the United States, go in and out of the States with it. Some like to come to the States prior to the program, so I think the only option here would be a tourist visa. But in terms of studying in the United States, student visa is the key. Off-campus safety, again, depends on where your program is, but in general, from what I saw here in the United States, most campuses are very, very well protected, super safe, always surrounded by police. So because they know that it's a campus, they know there are students around, they know there are patients around, so they're pretty much strict with these kind of safety protocols. So I can say that it's safe here around campus. Interview questions, it depends on many things. Depends on what are you interviewing for, if it's a specialty program or is it a school program, repeating the last 2 years dental school. But again, the key to me in interviews is being yourself and not just saying what the other person wants to hear, because everyone wants to do that. Everyone wants to impress the other person. But trust me, most directors here have seen many applicants. They've heard it all. So you being yourself and having your own personality and creativity in your interview or your personal statement or CV sets you apart, puts you apart, and they will remember you. I would say just be yourself in the interview. Do not try to impress the director by saying what he wants to hear. Did extracurricular community work boost your application? They're super helpful, of course. It's great to have in your CV. It shows that you don't only do dentistry, you do other stuff in your life. But what is it, a make it or break it kind of scenario here? I don't think so. I know a couple of friends who applied and made it to the United States in terms of specialty or IDP programs that haven't done or did minimal extracurricular or community work. So it's nice to have it, but it's not gonna stop you from specializing or doing any programs here in the United States. So I showed you a picture of Buffalo in the beginning of the presentation. That's only 2-3 months in the summer. Most of the year in Buffalo, New York, it's snowing, and the snow here is pretty bad. You can't move around. It's very hard, and it gets dark by 3 p.m. And my first experience here in Buffalo last year was very, very difficult dealing with the snow here. Transportation is super hard, especially when the snow starts melting. Floor gets super wet and everything starts sliding around. So this is Buffalo most of the year. Most of my close friends have seen these pictures before. I've sent them these pictures last year. And now we can start the Q&A. So you can either unmute and ask the question or type it into the chat. And if you have any questions after the presentation is done, you can contact me through Instagram, and you have my email down there, mohammed1996@hotmail.com. And again, most of the participants here are my friend and people I met before. So don't be shy, just jump in, send me an email, and I'll try my best to help. Time difference is tough, so I might be a bit late with the replies, but I'll always reply. And thank you so much for having me here, and it's a pleasure being part of the USDSA. I'm back again here. Again, homesickness hits me every now and then, and this came in just in the right time.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for this lovely presentation. And as we told you before, once a USDSA member, khalas, you're always going to be a USDSA member. So we had to drag you here. So we have a few questions in the chat box. If you don't mind, I'll read them out for you and you can answer.
Perfect.
All right. So the first question is from Lamar. She's asking, when should we take the INBDE 1?
So INBDE 1, I would recommend taking it just after exit exam, because you study for exit exam anyway, and INBDE is similar. You have to study because some stuff in the States are different than back home. But after the exit exam, I would say is the best time to go for it. Back in my days, which a couple of years ago, we had 2 parts. I did my second part after my exit exam, which made my life easier. Didn't have to study much for it. So after your exit exam is the key timing for INBDE.
All right. And we have another question, which is, so we have to be physically in the USA to take the INBDE. Can't it be done through the embassy?
No, you have to be in the States or Canada.
All right. And then Marwan is asking, when is the best time to be preparing for the INBD?
It's a good question because it's not about preparing much. It's more about how much you give priority to dentistry throughout your dental school years. You can focus for 5 years of BDS and go into an IMBD exam with 1 week of studying, or you can not focus and then study for months and months and months and still pass the IMBD exam. So it depends on you as a person. If you're committed to dentistry, if you're studying throughout your 5 years, knowing your basics really well, because it all starts with basics, then you won't have to study much for the exam. So it can range from 1 week to a couple of months.
All right. And Hiba is asking, do you know how much the tuition approximately is in Ohio?
Tuition for what? Last 2 years dental school or specialty programs?
I believe she's referring to the specialty.
It depends on the specialty, but generally Ohio, maybe 20 to 30,000 a year dollars. That's general amount.
All right. And we have another question. Do they require work experience? And is internship a requirement, or can we directly go into the program?
It's a question from Gada, president of USDSA. Work experience, it's nice to have it, but it's not a requirement. Like I said, I'm the youngest here in the program, in all residency programs in Buffalo. I had just less than a year work experience working as a clinical faculty in UDHS. So it's nice to have it, but is it a requirement? No, it's not required. Again, they just want to know that you're going to be committed here because it's an investment for them and for you. They don't want someone to drop out after a couple of years because they're going to be losing if someone does that. So passion and them knowing that you have potential is the key. And internship is a requirement. It's not a requirement, but it's super important because they have something called GPR program here, which I talked about in the beginning. It's a general practice residency. And when you apply to the States here, our internship is considered a general practice residency. So I always recommend when you talk about internship in interviews or in your CV, mention it's a general practice residency because it's exactly similar to what they do here in the States, but the terminology is different because internship in the States here doesn't mean that you work on patients. So it's nice to have an internship because they consider it a year of working on patients.
All right, perfect. So another question from Rend. For the advanced standing program, it was mentioned that experience in the US is considered. Does that mean research or working as a dental assistant?
Both. Or shadowing. You can come in and shadow students or shadow residency programs. Any experience in the United States is appreciated here. They love that.
All right, perfect. And another question. What's the difference between ECE and WES?
So differences, they are both exactly similar companies, but the difference is some schools require ECE, some schools take WES. It's some kind of business mentality kind of thing. Most schools take ECE though, very minimal take WES. So it depends on what schools you want. Hence why I said the first step is doing your dent pin and looking at the search engine, looking what the school wants. If they want ECE, you do the ECE. If you don't want the WES, do the WES. Some people do both. To me, I did only the ECE because most of the programs I applied to required ECE.
All right, perfect. And the last question that we have here is, what are some ways we can be gaining experience during undergrad?
Many ways, actually. You can shadow residents, especially now that we have specialty programs in our school back in US. They like shadowing in the States, so shadowing residents is nice. You can shadow dentists outside of the school. You can do courses, but if you want to apply for specialty programs, try to do courses that are related to your specialty program. If you want to apply for ortho, it's nice doing ortho courses and not endo courses, because they'll ask you in the interview, you've done lots of endo, but you're applying for ortho, and why is that? So try to be smart in what you do. If you know what you want to do, start early. If you don't know what you want to do, you can do general courses, and then as soon as you realize what specialty you want to go for, this is where you start shifting towards the course oriented towards that specialty.
I think, like you said, the first step we need to do now is narrow down our options and like know what we want in the first place.
Even before that step, my advice is try to focus on very well on didactics during your study period, because it'll save you lots of time for doing those exams. The more time you spend during the year studying and knowing the basics, the easier the exams will be, and you won't have to study much for the exams. So this is the first step. Just focus on your didactics really well, because what I realized is we are really taught really well in the US. You'll be surprised how good we are when you move around different countries. We're very well clinically oriented, and in terms of didactics, we know our theory very, very well.
Well, that's a relief to hear. So we have one last question from Rend, and she's asking, can I do my internship in the US or is it better to do it here?
Okay, so can you do it? You can, 100%, but they don't have much internship programs here. I think they have one in Florida. I have a friend who's done it in Florida. What I would recommend doing it in the country you graduated from, so you can get licensed before leaving the country. That's what I did. I think it's important to have a license before leaving the place.
All right, perfect, doctor. I think this concludes it for our Q&A session. If anyone else has a question, please leave it in the chat box. If not, then I will proceed by thanking you, doctor, so much for this lovely presentation, genuinely, and it was very encompassing. Almost answered all questions that we have and made the process way easier now. And that concludes it in this case for today's What's Next, second edition. Thank you all so much for attending, and we hope the information was enough for you guys. If you have any other questions, please feel free to leave it in the chat box, and then we'll try sending it to our speakers. Otherwise, if you have any suggestions for next year's What's Next, then that would be really lovely. We're currently writing a list, and we're going to be forwarding it to the next USDSA board. All right, so don't forget to send it to our USDSA page. All right, one last note before I leave you guys in peace. The recording will be posted later in the meeting chat, and you guys will have free access to it. All right, otherwise, guys, have a great day, and I hope to see you on campus soon. All right, take care.